All right, what's going on? Drive time Thursday afternoon, about 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Another warm day, another nice day. The inversion certainly is settling in. We could probably use a storm or two, but it's about 45 degrees and sunny, as it has been all week here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass. Thursday means football is back. NFL Thursday Night Football tonight should be a really good one. It's Green Bay and Detroit live from Ford Field. You can hear that game on this little radio station right after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock here on The Drive. So should be a fun game tonight. The Thursday night games this year have been better than in years past, at least for the most part. These are two really good teams. Detroit has moved up the Vegas favorite list to win the Super Bowl. They're a 3-point favorite tonight against Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. So Thursday night football on your airwaves tonight here on ESPN 700. Probably fantasy football playoffs round one for some of you, potentially. We're going to get going next week. I know you don't give a rip. I like to start our playoffs after all the byes are done, so we'll go week 15, round one. But a big slate of NFL games as a lot of playoff implications are at stake. Now, one day closer to championship weekend in college football. Coming up tomorrow, it's going to be UNLV Boise State. If you are a fan of the Big 12 Conference, you are cheering mightily for the run-in Rebels for UNLV. Boise is a 4-point favorite. That game is in Albertson Stadium, Boise, Idaho. Tulane Army will get going tomorrow night as well, and then a bevy of really good games on Saturday, starting with a Big 12 championship game in Dallas at Arlington. AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. It's Iowa State taking on Arizona State. ASU is a 2-point favorite. It'll be the SEC's turn after that with Georgia, Texas, over to the Big Ten with Penn State, Oregon. And then the nightcap is another game that, as a Big 12 fan, you probably want to be cheering for. It's Clemson-SMU. If Clemson beats SMU, maybe that opens up the pathway for either Iowa State or Arizona State to get that first-round bye. Brett Yormark with some very strong comments yesterday. Friend of the program, Brett Yormark, joined us Big 12 Media Days, saying that the CFP is favoring logos versus resumes. Not a hot take, not a new take, and not necessarily incorrect. The fallout, I guess, I don't know, early signing period yesterday, as we talked about. We kind of gave you an update as far as some of these prospects go for the University of Utah and for BYU as well. But we'll see how many of these young men end up playing for the schools they sign with, because that's the cruel reality of the modern day and age of college football. But Utah's recruiting class currently ranks number 38 in the nation. This is according to 247 Sports, their overall team rankings. That would be good for fifth in the Big 12. They got a bump when they flipped Racine, I believe it's Gilroy Jr. from Ole Miss. He's a 4-star running back and had a bevy of offers. And obviously, the Utes right now looking for a bell cow running back. Mekhi Bernard, who had a good season, will get gone now. So a big flip for Utah, and they find themselves with a top 40 class, a top 5 class in the Big 12. BYU finds itself at 55th in the country with their recruiting class. That's 12th in the Big 12, 5 spots below the Utes with their recruiting class. BYU right now, excuse me, and last year it was kind of the same situation. They were in the mid-50s. They had a couple of last-minute signees that bumped them up into the 40s. And, of course, the transfer portal that gets going here in just a few days will be of interest for, of course, both local and national college football fans. Where will BYU go bowling? There's actually a couple of different options, and we probably won't know until the results over the weekend come in. And as of right now, even BYU doesn't know. The bowl projections early on from Kyle Bonagura and Mark Schleybaugh had BYU in the Alamo Bowl taking on Colorado, but that is that's depending on what happens with some of these Big 12 or some of these college football games, namely the Big 12 championship game. We don't know where BYU is going bowling yet. Utah is not bowling, but they also do not have an offensive coordinator. Okay, we'll get into this on the show today. Another candidate was snatched. We'll tell you who that is and how it all went down and what could be next for the University of Utah in their search for an offensive coordinator. The Utah social media team released a signing day video featuring Coach Witt. Very hard at work, as I said yesterday, and as I've talked about all week. I just feel that Kyle's coming back as a result of the gap between the end of the season and where we're at today, and the fact that there hasn't been any announcement. Because when a coach is under contract, you don't need an announcement that he's coming back. So I know there's no public knowledge. I know there's no public acknowledgement that Coach Witt is coming back, but I think that's where I've landed on the whole thing, that Kyle will be back on the sideline for Utah. And he and Morgan, of course, in lockstep to try to figure out who's going to be calling plays next year. And that's kind of the big story when it comes to the local college football scene up on the Hill. The L.A. Lakers are in trouble. I know nobody gives a rip, but watching the Laker game last night, Eric Spoelstra, the coach of the Miami Heat, is thought to be one of, if not the best coaches in all of pro basketball, and he put on a clinic against J.J. Redick, who appears to be over his skis. So, fun night of NBA hoops last night. The Utah Jazz, as of now, will be hitting the road for quite some time. They do have a home game as a result of that break for the NBA Cup. The Jazz have been eliminated for the NBA Cup, but they will have an opportunity to play back at home. So we'll do a little Jazz basketball today and some NBA basketball on the program. All right, good guest list. The Utah women winning last night at the Delta Center. They smoked Utah State. Gavin Peterson will join us. Have not had an opportunity to interview Coach Peterson since he took over after Coach Rob went to Los Angeles. So excited to interview Gavin Peterson today. We'll bring in the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack. Gordon Monson from the Salt Lake Tribune, my old radio host back in the old days on the old show, on the old station. He's going to roll by today. Chris Camerani live in studio. CK on a Thursday, typically a Friday staple, but excited to catch up with CK today. Do a little sports court with our friends from Handy and Handy a little bit later on the program. Gavin Peterson, Craig Bolerjack, Gordon Monson, Chris Camerani, a little sports court. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners on this warm and sunny December Thursday afternoon. And that guy, Porter Larson, on a Thursday. All right, no OC, no offensive coordinator. Have you withdrawn your name from consideration?
No.
Okay.
I haven't yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Morgan to be the head coach. I want the DC job, just to be clear.
Oh, that's what you have your eye on.
I'm a defensive guy, even though I was more of a wide receiver, kind of catch passes, do the other things offensively.
Well, the problem is if you were the OC, we just have 14 personnel. We'd have like 6 tight ends.
We would have at least 6 tight ends, plenty of them on the field as well. So, no, I haven't withdrawn my name from consideration, but I'm kind of holding out, letting the guys up there, this iteration of the Utes, figure it out, and then I'll swoop in later.
All right, good stuff. So, of course, if any information comes our way today, we will bring it to you as soon as we have it, with the fluid and ongoing situation for Utah football to find their next offensive coordinator. Our first guest will be Gavin Peterson, head coach of the Utah women's basketball team, off to a very good start this year. But before we catch up with Gavin, we are going to do the opening tip. So it's brought to you by Standard Restaurant Supply. It's your tailgate headquarters. Get everything you need to make your tailgate epic. Standard carries everything that you need for your tailgate. They're located at 3500 Southwest Temple and online at standardrestaurant.com on a Thursday. Time now for your opening tip. So even though Utah football is done playing this season, certainly a lot of storylines surrounding the Utes as of right now. And, of course, early signing day, where according to 247 Sports, Utah has locked in a very solid top 40 class in the country, a top 5 class in the Big 12. Transfer portal right around the corner. Sione Fotu announced his intention to hit the transfer portal along with Jalen Glover, a couple of Utes, but nothing all of that damaging as of now, which certainly is excellent news. And so we turn our attention to who the offensive coordinator is going to be. So according to several sources, Mac Leftwich was in Salt Lake City yesterday interviewing with the University of Utah to take over as their offensive coordinator. Pete Thamel, about 6 hours ago, reports that Mac Leftwich is headed to Texas Tech. It's a 3-year deal to become the next offensive coordinator down at Texas Tech. And, of course, he has been at Texas State, where they've been a top 15 offense for the past 2 years. He's only 29. but he was thought to be really one of the big-time candidates, not just for Utah, but obviously around the country as well. So unfortunately, now Utah has to turn their attention elsewhere. We were told, at least the people that were reporting on this, Ben Arbuckle was their number one choice, and Ben heads to Oklahoma. And look, Texas Tech, I mean, ultimately, I think one thing to keep in mind here, because I've seen a lot of reaction like, oh, this is so embarrassing that Utah wanted him and he ended up going to Texas Tech. I mean, my understanding is he's from Texas. Mac Leftwich is from Texas, and it is an opportunity to have a bigger, higher profile job that essentially is in your backyard. I mean, I don't view this as like an indictment on the process for Utah. And look, honestly, I can't sit here and tell you how high Mac Leftwich was on their priority. We all have been told that Arbuckle was the number one choice. Ben Arbuckle was the number one choice. And of course, Oklahoma is a college football blue blood. Maybe they haven't been who they were once upon a time for a few years, but you don't blame Ben Arbuckle for heading to Oklahoma. And honestly, I don't view this as an indictment on the process. I just think, my best guess is Mac Leftwich wanted to stay in Texas. It is his backyard. So now that leads us to what's next, who could be next. Am I crazy, Porter, for continuing to bring up Brian Johnson's name? I mean, am I absolutely up in the night? I don't know how much BJ makes. And he obviously has a great thing because Jaden Daniels is really good. He's like the assistant head coach and also the passing game coordinator in Washington. But if he makes $600,000-700,000, Coach Ludd was making close to $2 million. I don't think he would emphatically say no. Now, let me just say this. Typically, once you've tasted the meals on an NFL charter, and once you've tasted the life of professional sports, you usually only go back to college if it is like the final fallback, if you don't have another option. Most people that are in the NBA or the NFL, they want to stay in that space. But if you're Coach Witt, if you're Morgan Scalley, isn't that a phone call you at least make? I mean, and I hate to be the guy that always does the whole thing where you're like, hey, bring the Utah guy back home. But Brian, by his own admission, was just not ready the first time around, and he was super young. Now, with all of the experience he's had in both college and pro football, I feel like that would be a home run hire. I really do.
I mean, I think the hire itself would be really good, and obviously Brian is much more well experienced now. He's been a play caller before. He's developed a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, you look at the list of quarterbacks that have worked with Brian Johnson, Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, like that, and you can go further back than that. There's a lot of successful QBs that attribute a lot of that to the guy that coached them in Brian Johnson. And, I think that this time around would be a better fit. I don't think you're crazy, and you are right with that, the 600 to 700 range. I believe Brian's salary is like $665 with some bonuses there that I do believe he's going to hit. But Utah could best that, right, as far as an offensive coordinator position goes. The question is, how close does Brian think he is to a head coaching job, another OC job? How close does he think he is to moving up the ladder at the NFL level? Because as you mentioned, man, it's going to take a lot to get a guy to leave that kind of lifestyle, to come and recruit, to come and spend all of your hours with 17, 18, 19-year-olds trying to keep them in your locker room with a kind of weird backdoor third-party salary thing in place. It's a tough sell to get a college coach at any level right now without backing up the Brinks truck for them in a way that only teams like Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Texas A&M are really able to do.
Well, if he's at 665 right now, and Mark Harlan and Coach Witt and the Utah football program are able to offer $2 million a year, like if you quadruple your salary and if you have some security, say they offer him, I don't know, a 3 or a 4 year deal. And I know offensive coordinators oftentimes are the first guys to fall on the sword when a team is struggling. But I just look at what the Commanders have in place and that young quarterback, and Brian right now, the assistant head coach of the offensive pass game coordinator, and Jaden Daniels is awesome. That's a tough sell. But if you can quadruple your salary, I would imagine you look at it. The question is, to Porter's point, which job ultimately is a cleaner pathway to potentially a head coaching job in pro football? And the answer to that appears to be obviously staying in pro football. I don't know. So far, Utah 0 for 2 as far as the reports of the coaches they wanted to hire. A lot of people honing in on Brendan Marion from UNLV. He's their offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach. Brendan's a little bit busy this week. They're playing in the Mountain West Conference championship game coming up tomorrow night. But maybe that's a name we hone in on. But as of now, I know a lot of people are talking about Jason Beck, the New Mexico offensive coordinator, BYU guy. Of course, a lot of cross-pollination between the two coaching staffs. But now we wait. And as I referenced, I'm not expecting anything official as far as the status of Coach Witt. Just the fact of the matter is he's the head coach who's under contract next year. You don't need an announcement that he's coming back. The announcement would have come, in my opinion, if he was leaving. We'll get back to this. We have a lot of college football guests on the show today, but I do want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks, which is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. It's very easy. So we'll use the Thursday Night Football game tonight. It's something like Jared Goff, more or less 240 passing yards. Jordan Love, more or less 2.5 passing touchdowns. It's very simple. If you've ever wanted to try to gamble on sports, you don't have to worry about over, under, and spreads and money lines. It's an easy way to kind of get in on the action. And right now, they're giving away free money, as I say every day. Just go get their free cash and see if you like it. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. Utah women's hoops off to a great start. Their head coach, Gavin Peterson, is our first guest on a Thursday. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. they'd be on the list. You got yours, right? You got your Spotify and Wrap today.
I did.
Our old boss, Kayvon, is a nerd. He was texting me about mine, but he's all about Amazon Music. So
Interesting. Amazon?
Yeah, he's a nerd. Kayvon's a nerd.
Does he have Pandora too?
Probably. Give me your number one band this year.
It won't surprise you. It was Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson. All right. Well, we're going to play a little music from our Spotify and Wrap today. I don't know if our next guest is a music fan. I've never interviewed him, but he's a hell of a basketball coach. Gavin Peterson on a Thursday. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
So the question obviously is, are you a Spotify guy? And then the follow-up is, did you get your Spotify and Wrapped?
No, I am not, and no, I did not.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think I've had much time other than focusing on the task at hand the last couple of days.
Yeah, I was going to say, Coach, I don't know you. This is the first time interviewing you, but I know coaches and have my whole life. You guys are lunatics. And so are you one of those grinders? All you're doing is watching tape, getting ready for the next one.
Yeah, it is. We choose to do this. We get to do this, right?
Sure.
It is. It's definitely one of those things. I'm a early morning arrival guy at the office, have been for many years, and that's not going to change. It's just now there's a lot more added to the plate of responsibilities, and I welcome that. It's just trying to find that balance to focus on in between the lines basketball stuff that pertains to our team and our opponents, and then also wearing the hats that you need to in order to lead this program from all different facets. So, still trying to figure it all out, but for the most part, I'm having fun doing it.
And that's what it's all about, Coach. And since this is my first opportunity to interview you, I will ask you some questions about yourself. I know coaches don't love to talk about themselves, but you've been at Utah for 9 years. And I just want to know about your background. When did you get the basketball bug? And then when did you know that you wanted to get into coaching? How did that all kind of come about?
I think just basketball has been a part of my life ever since childhood. My father, Craig Peterson, refereed collegiate basketball for 20-plus years. And so my first introduction to Salt Lake City was during the WAC tournament back in 1990 or 1991, something like that, where it was at the Delta Center, and he was officiating that, and he brought me along to tag along. So basketball has always been kind of a part of my growing up. I was always around the game, always loved the game. And then it wasn't until after college when I went to graduate school at the University of Hawaii and I got to work with the legendary Vince Gu, who is the all-time winningest coach at the University of Hawaii. But he gave me a chance to be a manager / grad assistant. And it was at that point where I thought, man, this is pretty cool. A lot of the detail that goes on behind the scenes, a lot of the game prep, the practice planning, player development, relationship building with the young women, everything. I just kind of gravitated towards that right away. And, being the only show in town in Hawaii at the University of Hawaii, it's just I didn't know that opportunities would present themselves. But lo and behold, it did, and I was able to be at the right place at the right time, capitalized on those, and, fast forward 23 years later, and here I am. So it's always been a part of my life, and grateful for the breaks that I did receive along the way.
I read that your wife, Karen, also has coached basketball. Is that correct?
Hi, yes.
Okay.
My wife, Karen, my better half, she actually played 3 years at the University of Oregon. Then she transferred back home to Canada to finish off her playing career in Canada. And then she started coaching. That's how we met. She was coaching at Sacramento State while I was at Idaho State. And then we both worked together 3 years at the University of Idaho. So, she totally gets it. She gets the demands and the time it takes to be successful at this level. Doesn't always like it, but she's understanding about it. And I'm so thankful to have her in my life in terms of allowing me to pursue my goals, my dreams, and at the same time, allowing the family to have some excitement and, give them something to be proud about.
Two basketball coaches as parents. I wonder if your daughters wake up to whistles and clipboards in the morning. What's that like as a partnership with two coaches?
It is, and it's funny. Karen's coached our girls' junior jazz team. Now they're in the bantam leagues, and she's coaching still our youngest. but she's ready to hand them off. It's sometimes we just want to be parents and cheer on and love up our kids. But yeah, our kids don't know how good they have it in terms of my wife has a great basketball mind, was a great player herself, and so it's just funny. They still look at us at mom and dad. So if we ever get into the gym and, hey, let's work on this today, I get the eye roll. I get the, like, you don't know what you're talking about, look. And it's like, okay, this is cool. I'm a parent.
I love it. I love it. Hey, give me the origin story of your relationship with Coach Rob. You know, she came on the show a lot. She was a good friend of the program. Yeah. And you know, you were with her prior to Utah. How did you guys connect? How did that come about?
Yeah, so, you know, back when I was at Idaho State, I actually met Lynn in Tasmania, Australia, when we were recruiting at a under-18 national event down there. And I remember that vividly because the gyms have no heat, and she was freezing her tail off. She had to go to the store to buy blankets and gloves and all these things. And I'm coming from, you know, working at Idaho State up the road in Pocatello where it's cold, and she's, you know, coming from Stockton, California, where it's not that cold. So I just was like, this is not that bad. So I always remembered that. And then we've had some common friends that kind of kept us in touch. So when she did have an opening on her staff at the University of the Pacific, I've always respected her from afar. I was at the University of Hawaii at the time, and we had just competed in the Big West. Pacific was leaving for the West Coast Conference, and I was intrigued about the chance and the possibility to join her staff. And, you know, selfishly, I wanted to learn from one of the best in what they were doing offensively. And at the time, there was a lot of dribble drive offense, 4 out, 1 in, things that we started to do here at Utah, but have kind of gone away from a little bit. We still have some tendencies that we do run. But it was just kind of a great opportunity for me to join her staff, learn from her, and also bring something of value to the table, in which I was able to, you know, head up the defense at Pacific and kind of did the same thing here at Utah. And it's just a relationship that, you know, we started out as, you know, working alongside one another, became good friends, and now she's one of our family members. Her family, it's just, they're part of our family, and so excited for her and her opportunity. And at the end of the day, I get a great opportunity as well. So it's a win-win for everybody.
So it really is such a wild industry, because I believe Coach Rob hopped on the show 48 hours before she received the job offer to go to Los Angeles. And, you know, she had received a very well-earned contract extension through 2030 prior to the season. So yeah, when I got the alert, and look, that's an opportunity you got to take. And I totally understand, and I'm very thrilled for her, because she's dynamite. She'll be great. Yeah. But what was that timeline like for you, Gavin? When did you hear the news, and what was the process that ultimately led to you moving over a couple of seats on the bench?
Yeah, I found out Sunday morning, the day before our McNeese State game, and, you know, she called me into her office, and which, you know, sometimes happens, but rarely. Like, it was random. After practice, she said, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Come to my office." So I'm like, oh, crap. Well, like, what's going on? You know, like, you just kind of start thinking, like, I know I didn't do anything, so it ain't me. But she sat me down, and she goes, okay, what I'm going to tell you is going to blow your mind. And it really did. So she broke the news to me. I immediately stood up off the couch and gave her a big hug, and I was, like, pumped. I was like, oh, my God, that's awesome. Like, WNBA, like, professional head coach in L.A. Like, that is awesome. And then I sat down, and I'm like, okay, now what does that mean for us? Like, then there were a lot of questions. And so she just basically hinted at the possibility of me being able to take over here, and that our administration wanted to talk with me. And so it was a whirlwind of emotions, excited for her, kind of concerned about what the future was going to be, not only for myself, but for our players. And then later that afternoon, after meeting with Mark and Charmel from our administration, they basically said, hey, you're our guy. There is no interim tag. We believe in you. And so it's very humbling, very gratifying to know that the hard work and the loyalty that I've shown over the course of my career went noticed. And it was just a proud moment for me. And then so we had to go through Monday versus McNeese State without being able to tell anybody. until we told our team Tuesday. And the reason we did that was we wanted our players to be able to focus on the game, not be distracted, also give us one last go at it together. And it worked out great. And I know when you have to enter into contract negotiations, in the professional level, all those non-disclosure agreements and all those type of things they have to enter into. So I get the sensitivity of it all. But I think we handled it the best we possibly could. And everything came out for the better.
Gavin Peterson is our guest, head coach of the Utah women's basketball team, off to a great start. I wonder, Gavin, as you know, in the industry, as they say, it's always a little tenuous when you take over for a legend. And Coach Rob changed the standard around here, right? I mean, we have 3 straight NCAA appearances. We have 3 straight 20-plus win seasons. We have players being drafted into pro basketball. So I wonder how much of your stamp you will put on this program and how much of just the continuation, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, if that makes sense. So just kind of walk us through that dynamic.
Right. Yeah, I think, being alongside her for the 9 years that she was here, I was given a lot of freedom, a lot of responsibility to do things that would better our program. With those responsibilities and with the leadership that Lynn provided, she, without knowing, and maybe she was intentional about it, but it's prepared me for this moment. And so I'm excited to kind of continue the legacy that we started here 9 years ago and has built into a national brand. And when you talk about Utah women's basketball, it resonates with people, and people immediately start to think about our high-powered offense. So, yeah, what my stamp is going to be, that's the farthest thing from my mind. I feel like we have great people in our program, from our players to our coaching staff and our support staff. And my job is to make this as smooth of a transition for everybody and keep the stability of the program going in the right direction. And whatever my stamp may be, it will organically happen. It's nothing that I'm going to be setting out to do intentionally. It's just going to happen naturally. And, I'll let people in the media and the people in the stands figure out what that's going to be, because I'm not concerned about that at all. The one legacy that I did hear from people that they want us to continue is dressing up. And so I'll still be in my suits. Our staff will still be dressing up, and we're going to look the part when we take the floor.
Love it. Now, as you referenced earlier, from what I've read about you, you have made your name as a defensive basketball mind. Is that fair to say, Gavin?
It's funny how some of those rumors get started, but no, I've been given that. But over the last few years, we do a lot of basketball talk behind the scene all season. So I'm equally as much of an offensive mind as a defensive mind. It's just Lynn really trusted me to handle a lot of the defensive decisions that have gone on over the last 9 seasons. But to be honest, our biggest change or our biggest jump on defense when we improved, Lynn had a lot of hands-on in that. And so, she's selling herself short too if she doesn't give her some credit for our defensive improvements over the last 3 years.
Sure. And the reason I bring it up, just for context, is I wanted to ask you, because, the thing that always has stood out to me when I've watched teams play that Lynn coaches, she's clearly very, very bright with how you guys execute offensively with your spacing and share the ball. Right. And so I wondered if you could kind of explain, and you just did in a way, but, as a guy who was tasked with helping out on the defensive side, combined with what you learned from Coach Rob offensively, how do you combine those two those two pieces of knowledge that you do have to maximize the potential of your roster?
Yeah, I think it's kind of being consistent with how it has been over the last few years, with my voice being heard by our players in the gym. I've had a lot of people say, like, well, how's it going to be? Now you're going to have to be the disciplinarian. Well, ask every one of our players. I've done enough disciplinary action or holding them accountable to some of the things that we do. So that's nothing new. I have a lot of experience with Lynn, both of us. We work so well together. So like the whole good cop, bad cop analogy, we've done that really well over the course of our 12 years together at Pacific and Utah. So I think just staying consistent. I think our kids know when I'm going to, if I'm being quiet or not calling them out on little detailed things, they know something's wrong. And they've pleaded with me, do not change. You keep being on us, get on us, don't let anything slide. They actually love being pushed to reach their potential. And again, I am so fortunate and lucky to have this situation unfold in front of me because I know every one of our players. I know their families. We've recruited them here. I know our coaching staff. I know our administration. So it's really, I won the lottery in moving over a seat. And I'm just so thankful and humbled and honored for that opportunity.
So I wanted to get your take on the dynamic of how collegiate athletics has changed over the past few years. We talk about it a lot with, the football side of things and how some really high-powered, powerful coaches have tapped out of really high-paying good jobs because they don't want to deal with the new reality of what college football or college basketball has become. You're a new head coach, Gavin, but you're not a new coach. You've been doing this 2 decades. So as you've watched the changes from your prism in your kind of piece of real estate, how have the changes in collegiate athletics affected women's hoops?
I think it's a great time to be a women's basketball player at the Division I level. I think a lot of opportunities are opening up for people, not always just within the lines, but outside of the lines with NIL and all these good things that come with it, revenue sharing coming down the road next year. So it's a great time to be a part of women's basketball as it continues its trajectory. With that said, though, it really has become a lot more complicated. And in the recruiting process, it becomes a little more complicated as well. Our strategy, our foundation, and our principles with recruiting, it's not going to change. We want recruits to pick the University of Utah for our program, our university, our city, everything about the program. What you get on top of that with NIL and revenue sharing, that's just the icing on the cake. And, I've got to get updated with a lot of the, rulings that are happening, at the court levels, what that means for us as we move forward. So when I do get in front of recruits, I can be as clear and, to the point and be truthful with what I'm telling them. Because you hear a lot of stories about people being promised X amount of dollars, which is not the case because nobody knows what that's going to look like yet. But yeah, it has changed, and, I love what I do, so I'm going to change with it, and I'm going to try to do my best to make sure that Utah women's basketball stays nationally recognized and stays relevant as a perennial top 25 program.
So Craig and his men's basketball team with the jump to the Big 12. The Big 12 on the men's side is just a nightmare. And it's good on the women's side too, Gavin, but the Pac-12 for the women's basketball side of things, I think, was a little bit deeper and probably overall, in my opinion, better than the Big 12 on the women's side. So it's not going to affect you as much, at least from the outside looking in. But I did want to get your take on how changing conferences has affected the program and the challenge that you now have in front of you with this new Big 12 slate.
Yeah, I don't think it's affected us too much right now. Our recruiting has stayed the same. We recruited a lot of Midwest to begin with. I think that just helps solidify our name recognition in those states. So I'm excited about that to continue to recruit that area. And then it's kind of an exciting time. It's new. There are new cities, college towns that we're going to have to fly into and get acclimated with. But yeah, the competition is the competition, and we have some really good teams right now in the top 25, and it's cool to be not mentioned because I think that puts a chip on our shoulder and keeps us hungry and motivated to keep climbing that mountain. And we were just in the Cayman Islands, and TCU was there, so we got a good up-close look at them, and they're a great team. I think they play South Carolina either tonight or tomorrow, but, they're still undefeated. We played Baylor a year ago. We lost, I think, by 7 points early in the year to them. So, we're familiar with and we're excited to face some of those top 25 teams. And they're going to be great opportunities for us to get that, key victory, key win on our resume come postseason time. So, again, great opportunity in front of us. Once we get to Big 12 play, we're going to be excited about it.
I thought it was really cool to hear Kennedy last night talk about, growing up in Utah, going to Jazz games and having the opportunity to play at the Delta Center. You guys, you stomped Utah State pretty good, but what was that experience like for you guys to go down into an NBA arena, play in front of your fans, and come out with a win?
Oh, it was awesome. I was like on cloud nine from the morning I woke up at about 5:30, 6 a.m. I'm like, I'm ready. Let's go. Like, I didn't have to get motivated to get on my Peloton bike and ride. Like, I was just jacked. Then we got to shoot around, and I'm walking around. It's just like, man, 2 months ago I was at a UFC fight right here. I was a huge Bulls fan when Michael Jordan was playing growing up in Honolulu, Hawaii. It's like, this is the bucket he made. Like, I was in heaven just taking it all in. I've been to Jazz games. I've been to many other events, concerts and whatnot in that arena. So it was really cool. And then before the game, I locked eyes with Kennedy, and I'm like, how cool, man. You're the homegrown kid from Utah, and you get to play here in the Delta Center. So take it all in, have fun, and just try to stay as focused as possible while having fun. And they really did. They came out locked into the game plan, and they sustained that for 40 minutes, which is not always easy to do when you're up big. But I'm so proud of our players the way they did that. And again, cool experience. I'm telling anybody who'll give me a listen, I think that's something we need to do annually, and would love the opportunity to do that to promote women's basketball and women's sport here in the state of Utah.
Well, Gavin, I appreciate the time. Congrats on the promotion. Off to a great start. We always have space for you here, so if you want to hop back on, please let us know, and best of luck the rest of the way, okay?
Awesome. I look forward to the next time. Always appreciate it, guys, and go Utes.
All right, Gavin Peterson, head coach of the Utah women's basketball team. They're off to a 7-2 start. Their L's came at Northwestern and then at home against Mississippi State, but two very close games. It's a good team. They beat Notre Dame, the number 3 team in the country, smoked Utah State last night at the Delta Center, back in action on Sunday against Princeton at Rice Eccles. That would be different, at the Huntsman Center. Hey, you know what? Let's fill Rice Eccles for the Utah women's basketball team, but Princeton is the opponent coming up. Big 12 on the women's side is good, but not as much of a gauntlet as Craig and his men are going to be facing. And, of course, cheering for Gavin and also cheering for a good friend of the show, Lynn Roberts, and her new gig at Los Angeles as the head coach of the Sparks. So good stuff there. Brought to you today by Overtime Cards and Collectibles, which is the best spot for all your football, basketball, hockey, MMA, and even Pokemon card collecting. Quick story for you, anecdotally. If you're around my age, there's a good chance, and you're listening to Sports Talk Radio, there's a good chance at some point when you were younger, you probably collected cards, right? Sports cards. For me, it was basketball, baseball, football cards. I had a grip of them. And for whatever reason, just never threw them away. Thought at some point maybe they'd have some value, but drug them around in this big bin every time I moved. And when my buddy Chris opened up his place at Overtime Cards and Collectibles, I took that bin out to him and I said, just tell me if there's any value here. I had a 1997 Kobe Bryant rookie card in my collection that I didn't even know I had. And Chris has all of these crazy stories of guys who have come in with their old collection, and they've uncovered like legitimate gems that are worth thousands of dollars. So definitely do that. It's 10673 South State Street. You can check them online at overtimecardsandcollectibles.com, where you can buy or trade. And, of course, it's the holiday season, so great stocking stuffers with Overtime Cards gift cards as well. Check them out, 10673 South State Street, or online at overtimecardsandcollectibles.com. Craig Bowler-Jack joins us coming up next. Then it's Gordon Monson and Chris Comrani. We're busy on a Thursday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. This was on your Spotify Unwrapped?
This was. And it is every year, I think, just to be clear.
Give me song title, artist title.
What's up? Four Non-Blondes.
Is this 80s, 90s?
I think late 80s-ish.
Feels like 90. I would not have guessed that this was on your Spotify Unwrapped.
Big Linda Perry fan here, just to get that out there.
Okay, you surprise me often. I figured it was a bunch of dudes named Luke or Brian or Zach or like a derivative of all those names.
Zero Luke Bryan, just to be clear.
What about Zach Bryan?
Zero Zach Bryan.
What about
Some Zach Brown. Some Zach Brown.
What about Luke Combs?
No.
What about Combs Bryan?
Luke Combs, the song that he covered, the original, I have that on there, but not his.
The song he
Fast
covered,
Car, Tracy Chapman.
Tracy Chapman. I had a little Tracy Chapman on my Spotify Unwrapped. That's exciting. All right, Craig Bolerjack's going to join us momentarily, but as we're waiting for Bowler to call, I'm putting in an order, and I need some advice because you're Mr. Workout Guy. So I got another gift card, okay, for a shop that sells supplements, and you're telling me I need to be taking collagen peptides.
I mean, you don't need to be,
Okay.
but listen, I would say that like 80% of supplements, additives are snake oil, right? They're people getting you to buy stuff so they can make money.
Okay.
I take, and I don't take anything. I don't take like very serious about what I throw in there. I should probably do more medicine stuff. But I take collagen, I take creatine, and that's really it as far as like the daily supplement thing goes. And it's not going to change anything dramatically, but it does add some help to your joints, your hair, your skin, your eyes.
Ooh.
Stuff like that.
Okay. No protein powders.
My collagen has a little protein in there,
Right. You
but
don't
yeah,
have to brag about your collagen.
I eat enough steak. I don't need to add a protein shake in there.
All right. Fair enough. All right. We're going to be joined by Bowler coming up in just a little bit. Gordon Monson will stop by. Sometimes we're in studio, but Craig is traveling. The Jazz are on the road for a while. Now we're going to bring in Chris Camerani, but the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, on a Thursday. Bowler, happy Thursday, sir. How we doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Just got to Portland and no rain, so that's a happy Thursday for me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. At this time of year in Portland, you're going to experience the rain for sure. All right, Bowler. Look, man, it's tough watching. And
it's tough. It is tough.
It is, and we all know the deal. And I will say this: Oklahoma City is scary good, even without Chet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good team, and what they do, they get a lot of attention for SGA and their offense, and deservedly so. They're a nasty ball-hawking defensive team. So let's just start in a vacuum. 19 turnovers in the first half, which tied an NBA record, 29 leading to 45 points. Jazz fall to OKC, NBA Cup group play. What'd you see from your front row seat?
Well, I saw a team, Oklahoma City, Spence. Let's start there. Who could be a title contender, in my opinion, when Chet gets back healthy. I've never seen a defense that swarms and just constantly works as one unit. I mean, swing it from one side to the other, run it down the paint, force a shot out. The Jazz, again, don't have the experience to handle that type of pressure on a nightly basis, and it's been an issue all season long. This one was out of sight in the sense of steal, 18 in all. It's the most steals, I believe, or ties the steals, most steals this season in the NBA. It was rough. Will Hardy continues to try to find a positive or two out of things as this team continues to grow. But, it gets to the point, Spence, where you just kind of sit back and just go, wow, what will be the turning point? What will it take? And maybe that's another player or two down the road. But right now, the experience you get from my chair is I think the concern for Will would be not to get demoralized. I think that's a correct phrase or one word to use in a game like that it totally stunts your ability to grow and move forward. So, we're in Portland. They've struggled. It's a whole new life without Dame as they continue to make those adjustments. So when I look on the schedule where to go, like Sacramento as well, do the Jazz want to win? I think one win on occasion obviously helps boost morale and get you back in the gym with a more positive attitude. But we all know what, the situation is, and that is to let the young guys play at the bulk of the minutes. And that's where we're going. And it's tough. It is tough to sit there and see some great moments and then just that 6-minute span or so that just absolutely derails what the Jazz are trying to do.
So prior to the team taking off for the road trip, and you guys will have a home game. It was announced prior to the announcement that Phoenix will be in town next Friday. You guys were going to be on the road until Saturday, December the 28th, when Philly rolls into town, and then you're going back on the road for New York, Miami, Orlando. So it is a lot of time away from home. And Will talked about the opportunity to come together as a group on these trips, and you're on the trips with the team. How do they seem, man? I mean, getting your head kicked in like this night in and night out has to take its toll.
It does, and I think there's a huge learning curve that's happening right now on what it takes to play a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and even run into a wall of Luguentz Dort, an undrafted player behind you who's made a living in the league being a defensive wall, and understanding what it takes to play at this high level night after night. I think that they're getting a huge taste of that right now. And Spence, I tell you, the road, I'm in the lobby, and guys are walking through and heading up to their room and probably thinking about some late lunch around town. They'll practice with a shoot-around in the morning and then play the Blazers tomorrow. But I still sense they get it. Keontae's driven. I'd say Colin Sexton is driven, as you know. Walker Kessler has, I think bodied up a little bit this year, also mentally as well, physically and mentally, which was a must in his third season. But a long way to go, a long way to go. And that's my biggest concern as we roll into Game 40 and Game 50. Have you stripped these guys of confidence that they definitely have to have moving forward in their pro career? And I think Will's trying to balance that with positivity in his post-game comments. I thought he did a great job of explaining himself. And I made the call that Colin had run it to the rack and scored against the Lakers, but yet I didn't hear, or even my eyes were going going to the rim. Will was about at half court and made the call, the timeout call. But I think he at least goes to the microphone and he admits when he's right and also admits when he's wrong. And also in the sense of, talking to Colin. That's one thing I've noticed about Will. He talks to you, and I think he talks truths, and that's what the players need to hear right now.
Yeah, and, I want to continue on this theme, Craig, because, to start the year, Danny, Justin, anybody who took a mic, including Will, said it's development, it's young players. We need to see what sort of hand we've been dealt. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and, of course, that has been the deal. They are playing the young players, and they are playing these young players through difficult moments when they're making clear errors and mistakes, where if you're playing for something maybe a little bit more serious this year, you take him out of the game to maybe play a vet, give you a better chance to win. But there has to be, Craig, a very fine line between wanting them to learn what it's like to play with the varsity, as Gordy Chaser would say, but not allowing this consistent losing to seep into their psyche and the risk of them learning habits that lead to losing and winning. They're both habits. They're both things that are created with day-to-day, good habits, right? And ultimately, I'm not saying they have bad habits, but tell me from your vantage point, your thoughts on the fine line between learning lessons and allowing losing to seep into your culture.
Man, Spence, bingo. It's a razor thin. It's probably the biggest conversation had behind closed doors with Utah Jazz management. I think the balance is all on Will to make sure that they stay positive. It's hard. There are moments he tries to, I think, highlight to say this really went well. And he's always told me, look, Boulder, the problem is great teams can handle 2 minutes where they may, see a 7-8-0 run happen, but then they're able to put things back on track. The Jazz are in the 6-minute category or even beyond. And all of a sudden, what was a 5 or 6 point lead is allowed to be taken away and then down 15. So the runs are 15-2, 17-4, sometimes 20-4, 20-6. And I look in the players' eyes as they run across by the table, and, I think they are in kind of this shock mode of like, damn, things were going well. What happened? And that's where Will has to step in and explain that good teams start to up their defense. They'll double you. They'll trick you into thinking you're good, or they'll go to your weak hand and make you turn the ball over. And so if that's the process of learning, so be it, right? But I'm with you on the psychological part of it, and that may be the biggest challenge for Will this year, is to still be able to say, hey, here are some positives that we're moving forward, but also when you take a win, enjoy it and understand why you won. And, there's have been a lot of wins. And, Thurl and I try to just keep, pumping the wheels a little bit and trying to look at things. But in reality, what you see is what I see. And their struggles. They don't handle ball pressure. And that's something, and they don't, really understand the need to play both ends of the floor and be a defensive-minded player as well. The box score means nothing right now. And I think that's probably one of the biggest conversations he has with these young guys.
Craig, they have really bad defensive habits. They just do. And, I can't spin it any other way because we have smart basketball fans here, and I'm watching against OKC. And, yes, turnovers lead to runouts, but you have to try to get back, and then you have to track your man. Like, there are so many what I call pick sixes, just a steal and a bucket or a dunk on the other end. And then there are a ton of missed rotations where players are getting wide open looks. And that, look, I know that everybody loves Will, and he's had his option picked up for both year 4 and year 5. I know they're riding with him, but there has to be some sort of conversation about improving defensive habits, whether that's personnel or coaching or a little bit of both. They were 30th last year in defensive efficiency, and they're 30th again this year. There's no defensive metric where they excel. There actually are a few offensive metrics where they're acceptable, none elite. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing on defense that they do well. Why do you think that is? I guess is a long way of me asking you that.
Well, I think you have to just look down and see, our Danny and Justin Zanuck and Will have said this is a difficult league to make and to stick. And you know what? The data points are being collected, Spence, as we speak. And they'll have to make some tough decisions on right guy, yes, wrong guy, no, and move forward. I mean, that's just kind of the way this whole thing happens. Are all the right pieces here? No. Are more pieces coming in? Absolutely. But at what speed? And fans want that to be accelerated at a very quick pace. And you know what? Will does too. Look, his career is going to be, I hate to say, judged on success, but everyone wants to win now, and for him to have the options picked up through his 5th year is a wonderful thing for him. But I guarantee you, he doesn't just like sitting here getting beaten every night. He's a talented guy with some good ideas, some great ideas. Learned well with Popovich in San Antonio, but at the same time, are the pieces right? And that's where Danny and Justin have to do that evaluation with Will's help to say yes. He works in the system. No, he doesn't. He can't play both ends of the floor. And those are going on as we speak. And that's about as clear as I know. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. Fans have been really incredible at the arena so far this season. And, I applaud them as they watch some of these young guys make mistakes and grow. And, Keontae's got most of the pressure on him, Spence. I think you would agree. It's a tough position to really excel in this league because you have so much responsibility. How much time do you let a player grow into that? Walker is making himself known more, and he looks healthier, and he looks more mentally fit as the rim protector. And Markkanen is always a target now because there's really not a second option. And so Markkanen is getting double-teamed, triple-teamed at time, and his shot production and just point production is down. So, it's a tough time. And I still like what you just said to me was the fine line of the mental side of making sure, are you setting the right trends of winning and developing, and how do you balance that? And I think we're going to find out more, obviously, in the next 20 games on what direction they want to go.
So I mentioned some of the offensive metrics that at least are somewhat positive. They're playing quickly. They're 10th in pace, and they're number 2 in offensive rebound percentage. That's not a great stat because it does mean you're missing a lot of shots, but it also means you're getting some offensive boards. They're the worst team in the league in turnover percentage. They're the worst team in the league in giving up points off those turnovers. But the rebound percentage has to directly tie to Walker in a lot of ways, and I do want to give him a lot of credit because if there's an A-plus early season story, it is Walker. Okay, he's played himself into the conversation, and I'll say back into the conversation. I was never out on him, but it was so fun to watch him evolve as a rookie and so disappointing to watch him flatten out as a sophomore that now in year 3, to see him recapture what we were all excited about and even build on it, I think is such a positive. Nearly 3 blocks a game, 11 boards, 11 points. I'd like to see the free throw percentage up a little bit, and he's only shooting a couple of free throws a game. I wouldn't mind to see that up a little bit myself, but I don't want to be completely overtly negative when there's a real clear positive. From your seat, what have you seen with this evolution so far from Walker Kessler?
Your numbers are spot on, Spence. Last year, the early injury really just negated anything he accomplished his rookie season. I think he lost a lot of confidence. He was a bench looker, as you know, Will talked a lot about. Don't look at me. Go play. You don't need I don't need to tell you yes or no, you did well. And, that's another thing about being young. You don't want to make a mistake. And I think the Jazz make the mistakes in those panic moments that occur, which only makes the situation worse. And you forget to get back on defense, or you look at the bench and say, oh, it's my fault. Well, by that time, your man has left you and is 20 feet down the court and ready to run to the rack. And you've left your man, on an island back there defensively. So that's part of the problem. But for Walker, I think John Collins is another positive this year, in my opinion, just because he's another tenacious rebounder and has helped the Jazz on the offensive and defensive side quite a bit. But getting back to Walker, I'm proud of him. This could be a make or break year for him. I know it's only in his 3rd season. A lot of teams need bigs, but I'm just glad that he finally found some toughness. I think he's a tougher guy in the paint. He's learned to keep the ball above his head. He can finish. I still like you said, at one point he hit 4 out of 5 free throws, and everybody, was like, cheering, like, hey, man, maybe he's getting into a groove. But I don't know why a lot of bigs have problems at the line, Spence, but it's true. And a lot of it's just practice and the mental side of belief. Go up and, don't think about it. Go up and take the shot. But little by little, Walker Kessler has matured, and I think physically he feels much better about himself.
You referenced John, and for listeners that don't know, this is very incredible. And look, it's only, 16, 17, 18 games played as of now. I mean, we'll see how long this lasts, and hopefully he can stay healthy. John's played in 20 games. He's only missed 1 game so far. He's a 50, 40, 90 guy this year. He's shooting 53% from 3 and then 91.2% from the line. And he's taking 3 threes a game. This is not 40% on like 1 or 2 attempts. And I am a well-known, not huge John Collins guy, I guess is how I'll put that. And I didn't think it looked great last year. And look, if they're playing him to showcase him, all good, because he's got a player option for $27 million next year. So he's fine wherever he is. Do you think this is a scenario where they're kind of allowing John to get some usage and get some minutes to maybe move on from him? Or do you think, because he's, what is he, 26? I mean, it's not like he's 34. Or do you think?
No, he's, he and Colin Sexton both are still in that area of where they could be used in this Jazz lineup. Mm-hmm. And, is it money? Is it youth? Is it a combination? Or does he not fit? But I'll tell you what, John's been a pro. I've talked to him several times with Big T. And you know what? He's all in. I mean, and if he's blowing smoke, he does a great job at it. But I'm looking at his performance on the floor, Spence, and you're seeing what I'm seeing. The guy's busting his tail. He's much more comfortable with Will as his coach and understands the system better and understands what he has to do. He's had to play a couple, 3 different positions at times, 5, 4, and 3. That's the way it's happened. Filipowski's injury, put him back into more of a centerpiece. They've used Micah Potter. They've used Fee a little bit. Like Will told us, we're one injury or two injuries away from playing a lot of veterans to fill those minutes. And JC's out now, so that gives Sensabaugh some time. So this is a constant revolving door. But I think John's been the most consistent of any Jazz player. I said it on the air the other night in the pregame show. I just think if you look at the numbers and the production and the way he's handled himself and the way he's mentored these younger guys, I'd put him as the nearly 25 game MVP for the Jazz. And that's probably something, and no disrespect to John, that Danny or Justin would want to happen. But I think the mentoring is, but the way he's played, he has busted his tail. And if they do put him on the market, it only highlights him and to receive something even higher than just a John Collins or a player or maybe a higher draft pick, which is what Danny and Justin seem to continue to want to stockpile.
John,
so he's probably doing himself a favor, Spence, but he's also doing the Jazz a favor as well.
Yeah, John Collins, 50, 40, 90 is not a sentence I thought I'd be saying this year. So a lot of credit to him for sure. All right, last thing, I'll set you loose on this. And unfortunately, I do want to ask you about Keontae. And I just am starting to wonder whether or not he is miscast, whether or not it's a square peg, round hole situation. He just turns it over way too much. The shot selection stuff, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm not willing to dismiss or anoint a 20, 21-year-old player. But he is he's the young guy that is getting the most opportunities with the combination of his rookie year minutes and now sophomore minutes as well. And we just haven't seen improvement, Craig. I mean, that's just how it is. I wonder how you're kind of digesting the first part of the season for Keontae George.
Yeah, I would think inconsistency is the first word that comes to mind. I think knowing him and talking to Will a lot about him is that he coaches him very hard, okay? And what that tells me is that when you have to coach somebody that hard is that there may be, do you get what I'm trying to tell you to do? Now, to his credit, he's a 2 who's trying to be a 1 in this very difficult league. And there's only a few elite point guards, and those are the ones that lead teams to multiple titles or multiple playoff runs or win conference titles. And it's difficult to do. I think the Jazz see something in him, obviously, and they're not willing to throw the towel in. But you are correct, and the numbers prove that there is a panic. There is still the uncertainty of I'm doing the right thing. When does that settle down, if ever? I don't know. But I think what they're going to do, going back to, and you heard the same thing I did with Danny and Justin, is all these data points and the way that the metrics are all set up now in the league, they're going to find those numbers and decide one way or the other if they're going the right way or the wrong way. The turnovers are a big issue, and it starts those 10-2 runs that the opponents take, and he still has to be able to handle backcourt pressure. You've noticed in the early part of the season, a lot of teams decided to, on the inbound, after a made bucket, they'd come back and put 2 guys on him and try to get him on an 8 count or let him, or have a turnover. He's been able to handle that a little bit better, but look, we know the weaknesses of the Jazz, and teams are trying to exploit that. And they're roughing up Lowry Markkanen because there's not another guy that really at the moment can be a consistent scorer. And they've had good looks, right, Spence? But the bottom line is, can you make those shots? I mean, this whole conversation is about Keontae, Markkanen, the growth of Keontae, the growth of Walker. What do you do with JC and John? And what do you do with Sensabaugh? And is Isaiah Collier getting enough reps? So it's intriguing just to be a part of it and watch the pieces being moved around. And the injury to Taylor Hendricks we haven't talked about. Real quick, I know you got to go.
You're good.
But that may have set the whole game plan back, because Taylor spoke yesterday, and I'm glad to see he's in recovery, is in his second year, but cut way short, and that really threw probably John Collins into the mix even more so. And you got to see Filipowski before he had his ankle and leg injury. And maybe, the second-round pick at 32, you know what? That may be the best pick of all, just in the sense of the potential that he, has and the NBA body that he has. And it seems to be the IQ of the Duke basketball program allows you to understand the NBA game better. But, injuries always impacts a team, Spence, and that injury by Taylor Hendricks may have really turned the Jazz a little bit sideways. The expectations for his growth this year was big. He worked hard in the offseason. He looked, stronger, physical, more mentally prepared to play in the rigors of the NBA. But man, I hate to see him sidelined, and you may not see him back until the first of next year.
Yeah.
2025 is coming up, and you may not see him until January of 26. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's a big storyline that will be followed as this continued growth process of the Jazz continue.
No doubt. All right, Bowler, thanks for the time. Travel safe. Have a great call, and hopefully we can get you back in studio soon, okay?
Yeah, next week I think we'll do it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, sir. Craig Bowlerjack, TV voice of
soon.
the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are in action against the Blazers. Jazz have 7 of 8 on the road. Starting tomorrow at Portland, they'll be in Sacramento on Sunday. Quick trip back here for a Friday game against Phoenix. So that's actually nice. They get Sunday through Friday off and probably here in Salt Lake before hitting the road for another 5 roadies. We'll do some more Jazz coming up. Gordon Monson's going to be live in studio, do a lot of college football with Gordo. Chris Combrani stops by, latest on Utah's offensive coordinator search. Do a little sports court later. The Big Show, Big Hour on The Drive is brought to you by Big O Tires. It's their extended Black Friday sale. I learned something yesterday. B3, G1 free is buy 3, get 1 free. Nailed it. Going on right now. Big O brand tires, select sets of all their premium tires right now are buy 3, get 1 free. It's a $99.95 tip-top healthy car special right now. That includes a full synthetic oil change and a wiper blade replacement. Big O Tires has financing options to fit every budget and situation. Walk-ins are welcome. You can also schedule an appointment over the phone. Visit BigOTires.com right now to find a location near you. Gordon Monson joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. bet you
So
can
pack
see
the
this
car
coming.
and dry your eyes.
Like we switched roles. Like
I know they got plenty.
Zach Bryan. Zach Bryan was one of my top 5 this year.
That's fair. That's fair.
Changing.
And I like the country angle. I'm not a big Zach Bryan guy particularly, but I like that you're expanding your horizons.
Is that because you're a big Dave Portnoy guy?
No.
Aren't they beefing?
They are beefing,
Yeah,
but
that's what
it's there. I guess it's ancillary. Zach Bryan's not, how do I put this? He's a country singer who isn't a country guy. And he also is not, reportedly a very great guy. I know people who know folks in the country industry. So some things we'll leave off air there.
You're being a country music gatekeeper.
A little bit.
All right, that's fine.
But not really. I think if you're into the music, all on board, come along. But also, there's some off the stage stuff too.
All right. Off stage stuff with Zach Bryan I'm unfamiliar with. Gordon Monson, Thursday afternoon. Gordo, are you a Spotify guy? Do you use Spotify?
No, not really. I don't, but everybody else in my family does. But I am something of a country music expert. So if you have questions about that, I'm new to it. But, boy, I'm telling you, I'm having it cram down my throat quickly.
Yeah, that's Lisa and the girls all love country music, yeah?
Yeah, they do. And I married a rock and roller, but I don't know what happened to her, but she's gone country on me. And
right.
I guess I just, one of life's little battles I gotta overcome.
Well, I think you can overcome that one based off the quality of your wife's life. Okay, I think that's something that you can deal with just fine. Is that fair?
Yeah, and the poor quality of my choices in music, as you know, from many years of having to deal with what I like. But one thing we do have in common is our affection for rap music. As you know, as a former rapper myself, I not very good at it. I'll say it that way.
If only we had that sound of MC Godfather back in the day doing a little Biggie. One of the best radio memories I have, man. If only we had that sound somewhere. But all right, Gordo, let's start with okay. So I'll just unpack my take on this and then give you the space. I feel like if Kyle was going to retire, we would know. I feel like if he was done, there would be an announcement. And because there has not been an announcement, like, look, he's a coach under contract. You don't need a press conference to say I'm coming back. We know that he's under contract. My take on it is because there's been space between the end of the season and today with silence, he's coming back. What do you think?
Well, that's pretty good logic there. I think I just don't know yet. I don't know because in my conversations with people around Kyle, who I trust, the way the season ended had nothing to do with it, whether he was going to stay or go. Because as you and I have talked about this before, he's based it more on what he feels inside, what he thinks is most important. But what's interesting is that you heard that press conference about a week or so ago when he said he would base it on what was best for the program, not what was best for him, which I thought was sort of a weird claim considering what he's already contributed to the program through the years. But if it is what's best for the program, then go ahead and make it clear to everyone what you're going to do, because there are big decisions that the program is facing right now. It's kind of a critical point in time. And so wouldn't it be in the best interest of the program for him to come right out and say what his intention is so that it's clear to everybody? And maybe he's doing that privately. I don't know. But publicly, people are asking these questions and they don't know. And when you're trying to hire an offensive coordinator and you're trying to get your program back in a good place after what was a disappointing year, make it clear, man. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and to your point, I have to surmise that those in the know that are in the need to know room are probably people that have already been informed of his intention. That's just a guess of mine. I do agree with you, though. Make it publicly known, even if it's the most Kyle thing of all time, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm coming back. Just say it. I don't view the man as a wishy-washy, emotional decision maker. He's always struck me as a very pragmatic thinker, and my My guess is, if he was going to go, he would have just told people and then moved on to the next phase of his life. But as we sit here with no offensive coordinator hired just yet, do you feel like maybe the ambiguity surrounding Kyle is one of the reasons why they haven't been able to hone in on who they want to hire?
Yes, I think that's a reasonable suspicion, Spence. And I mean, they're losing out on guys they want, and I think that would contribute to it. And that goes back to what I said before. It would be in the best interest of the program for him to make it clear, because if it is unclear, then that's not helping in this process. On the one hand, you have Kyle Whittingham, a grizzled veteran coach who hasn't always been the easiest coach for offensive coordinators to operate under. There have been good years offensively for the Utes. There have been bad years offensively for the Utes. And there have been sort of vague years where it was somewhere in between. But Kyle, remember all that when he had the revolving door, what was it, 10 coordinators in 10 years or something? I'm not sure that he has the best reputation among promising young candidates because of what's happened in the past. On the other hand, you have a coach in waiting, Morgan Scalley, a respected defensive coach, but who has never been a high-level college coach, and so an offensive coordinator wouldn't know exactly how that's going to play out. How is he supposed to know it? He's never seen it. Now, Morgan might be saying to him, okay, look, this is what my philosophy is going to be, and this is the kind of offense I want. But until you're actually on the field, in the action, the heat of the moment, the pressure is on, who knows what he might favor? And so it's kind of here the Utes are in the middle of this. And if a decision hasn't been made, then how is a candidate for offensive coordinator supposed to navigate those waters?
Yeah, it's a fair point. And as of now, according to reports, Utah has tried to hire Ben Arbuckle, who signed a contract with Oklahoma, and Mac Leftwich, according to several reports, was in Salt Lake yesterday, but elected to stay in Texas to sign a contract with Texas Tech. Now we're hearing rumors maybe Jason Beck potentially is on the list. The offensive coordinator for UNLV, of course, they're playing tomorrow night. So Brennan Marion is their offensive coordinator, their quarterbacks coach. I wonder, Gordon, when we actually hear the announcement, what will you be looking for to indicate whether or not this is a Kyle Whittingham hire or maybe an out-of-the-box, maybe Morgan Scalley's looking to approach his tenure offensively a little bit different than Coach Witt has?
Yeah, that's a good point, Spence. I think that on the one hand, Kyle he's never wanted his defense to be put in bad positions. That he even this season has talked about that, and that's been an emphasis of his. Now Morgan Scalley is a disciple of Kyle Whittingham, but does the acorn fall far from the tree? If I'm Morgan Scalley, I want an innovative offensive coordinator who's going to take pressure off my defense by staying on the field, by controlling the ball, and by putting points on the board. Because without that, then you got pressure on your defense either way. And so why not go ahead and I'm not talking about necessarily some pass-happy nut who's just going to chuck the ball all over the field, but at least get some sort of newfangled approach which will move the football and score points. And that hasn't necessarily been the case or the priority as far as all things considered under Kyle Whittingham. So if they do hire sort of this new guy who's going to do something dramatic, maybe that would be a hint that it will be Morgan Scalley. But we're all kind of guessing at this point.
All right, so I am of the opinion that based off of preseason expectations, you combine preseason expectations with the results of the season. This is the worst Utah football season under Coach Witt, and I actually think he would admit that and say it out loud. How confident are you that this season was a blip on the radar, a moment in time, as opposed to who Utah football is now?
I think, there are arguments to be made both ways. look, the track record is clear that Kyle Whittingham, if he's going to stay, he's a great coach and he wins. His program wins. Utah football deserves its newfound reputation, or relatively over the past decade or so, as being a prominent program that does things the right way, or a lot of things anyway. They're not perfect. I think you would admit that, but that does a lot of things right. But I'm telling you, they have to have a quarterback. They have to have a quarterback. You can't get by anymore, Spence, in the college game without that particular position being stellar, And Kyle has talked about that. He said that himself. And so, I think Morgan Scally would agree with that. And so will they get that guy? Can they get that guy with the reputation the program has? I don't know, but they better know, and they better get that solved. If they do get that solved, then I would be bullish on the Utes or a whole lot of other programs. The culture is there. What's the NIL situation? Will they be able to pay the guys they need to really make it work? This last year, as you said, Spence, was so shocking that it does make you wonder, can this thing be turned again? Will it be Utah football as we have known it, or is this the beginning of a demise? I don't know how we would know that completely at this point. We have to wait and see.
These things are fleeting. Dynasties don't last. I'm not saying it was a dynasty. You have to win multiple championships to create a dynasty, but it has been kind of a golden era of Utah football, and all that can be had can be lost. There's your lesson for the day, kids. So things can change. One more thing here, Gordon, and look, this is clearly not going to happen.
Can I interrupt with one thing? What you just said there, Spence, reminds me. Remember how Jerry Sloan used to he used to legitimately be afraid he would never win another game.
Right.
He thought it was so slippery that he didn't know whether he would ever win another game. And if a guy like Jerry Sloan, who thought the way he did, who coached the way he did, was afraid of losing to that degree, it tells you exactly what you just said is absolutely correct, that it is fleeting. It is tricky. Nothing can be assumed.
For sure. And I want to move over here because I feel like I might either just be taking crazy pills or there's just no possibility that this would happen. But according to the data that we have, Brian Johnson makes about $670,000 a year, which is a very nice living. We'd all love to make that amount of money. It's like Gordon Monson money back at the old station. But ultimately, Brian has a really good thing going because Jaden Daniels is awesome. Brian's the assistant head coach and the passing game coordinator for the Washington Commanders. But Coach Ludd, I believe, was close to $2 million. So no matter how comfortable your situation is, you wouldn't mind quadrupling your salary. And by Brian's own admission and Kyle's own admission, back in 2012 when he was the OC here, he just wasn't ready for it. But my goodness, talk about experience since then, both at the college and pro level. It just seems like that's an avenue that is at least worth exploring. But a lot of guys, once they taste that charter, the charter food on the NFL side of things, they don't want to give up their pro football cushy life. But give me your thoughts on the potential of Brian Johnson, offensive coordinator for Utah football.
I was a proponent of Brian Johnson being an offensive coordinator back when they hired him the first time. And that turned out to be probably a mistake. He wasn't quite ready yet. But, Spence, you remember him. Remember we used to talk with him. He's an impressive person. He carries himself well. He knows his football. You saw what he did with the Utes when he was the guy in control out on the field. And so would I think that's a good idea? Yes, I would think that's a very good idea, especially with the reputation on the whole that he's built in the NFL. He has coached some terrific quarterbacks and run some pretty good offenses.
All right, a quick BYU thought. It's funny. You could actually make the argument that both Utah and BYU blew it, right? So Utah, preseason favorite, Big 12. Obviously, that didn't go well, didn't work out. BYU puts themselves right in the mix as the favorite after a 9-0 start. They stumble, losing 2 of 3 down the stretch, and It looks like it's the Alamo Bowl again, and I'm cheering for an Alamo Bowl BYU Colorado. I think that would be a really fun game to watch. You have two really strong brands. Dion brings a lot of eyes, so it's a decent payout for the BYU athletic department and a lot of eyes on your program. But what are your thoughts on the way the season ended and BYU, with everything in front of them, could not get the help they needed, and now instead of the CFP and the Big 12 championship, it looks like it's the Alamo Bowl?
I don't know how anyone can characterize it any different than disappointment. To see the way BYU lost those games, where they did not bring their A game, they didn't look prepared at various times in the game to be able to handle that. After the way they had put the ball up on the tee with 9 straight wins, and then to stumble the way they did. I don't know how, and I don't think it's being overly critical. I think it's looking at it for what it is. You judge a team based on what it's accomplished, right? And when they won their first 9 games, you say, okay, I see what this team can do. Now go out and do it. And to lose a game against Kansas on your home field, the way the Cougars did in that game, and with the mistakes that they made, that's got to be disappointing to anybody who is really paying attention to the program, let alone fans who root for it. And then what happened against Arizona State, again, more mistakes getting in the way. And the funny thing about it is, check me if I'm wrong on this, Spence, if the Utes had beaten Iowa State, then that would have made the path clear for BYU to get into the championship game. Am I getting that right?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
And the Utes lose that game. It's kind of like, I could see Ute fans going, wow, it would have been great to win that game, but maybe it wasn't so bad after all. But disappointment for BYU after a great start. And I was really surprised at Kalani Sitake that he was as upbeat as he was after those defeats, because it seems to me like he should have been heartbroken and kind of pissed off too. And he came out all buoyant and whatnot. And I like Kalani. You and I know him well, and he's a bright guy, smart guy. But I don't know what message was being sent there. It seemed like it should have been some degree of anger and a whole heaping of disappointment. As far as the Utes, I mean, that thing just blew apart, and I'm as guilty as anyone. You are too. We both predicted a great season for Utah, and I've been watching football for longer than I really want to admit right now, and I still look back. And I mean, I understand what happened to the team, and I can see why it fell apart, but I'm still – I mean, Utah's too good of a football program to have what happened to it happen.
All right, Gordo, last thing before I set you loose, and I'm glad you wrote on this. So Kevin Young and the BYU basketball program went back east for a non-con game at Providence, and they got smoked, and they've lost 2 of 3. It's a young team. It's going to take some time to gel. But that really wasn't the main story, because once again, a group of fans at a sporting event decided to launch into the chant that we've heard before, which is F the Mormons, over and over and over. And look, I don't really exist in the space of whataboutisms very much. I'm not here for the whole, like, well, what if it was the Jews or what, like, in a vacuum, as far as what this chant has kind of done as far as the damage to folks that you and I know in this community that certainly are members and active members of the LDS faith. I just don't know why it feels like it's more acceptable for an F the Mormons chant that we hear often, not just basketball, but football too. And I don't know why it seems to be so societally acceptable to knock on a group of people that, from my vantage point, most of whom are very kind, hardworking, community-orientated people. I know there are plenty of people that have issues with the faith. That's not a time, that's not a conversation that is for this time and for this platform. But unpack what you wrote and your thoughts on yet another chant aimed at members of the LDS faith, F the Mormons, that BYU basketball experienced at Providence.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. And look, as I wrote, I have great respect for the LDS faith. I'm a part of that. I do have some questions, and I bring those questions up on the regular in public settings. So, I mean, I'm not sitting here being defensive or having some sort of persecution complex, but this was totally out of line. And it's a cheap shot, and I don't understand why people do that. I mean, I could get a little political on this, and then it gets real sort of contradictory. But we're living in a place now that seems like a blessing has been given to be able to describe other people in denigrating terms. I'll say it that way. And people can read into that comment whatever they want or blame whoever they want. But for a crowd to be chanting that is ridiculous. And I talked to a guy I had in the column who was at the game with his 10-year-old daughter, and he just said it was very uncomfortable for them. And he said, look, I'm not a prude. He said, I wouldn't even mind it if they'd said F BYU. But F the Mormons? I mean, really? All of them? The entire religion? And I get it. It's a conservative faith that takes some positions that some people don't like, and they feel as though they're somewhat disrespected by some of those positions. I understand that. We can disagree, though, without chanting F the so-and-so, especially a religion that and just like in my column, the father, the president of Providence College, he said, look, this is totally out of line. We're going to address it on campus. This is not a reflection of what we teach here. And I think the students there should listen to what the school president says.
Yeah, well said. All right, my friend, appreciate the time. Hopefully we can get you back in studio coming up next week. Have a great weekend. All right, Gordo?
All right, you too, Spence. Good talking with you.
Gordon Monson from the Salt Lake Tribune. More college football, and probably will get weird. It is CK, Chris Comrani. If you're not watching us on the YouTube feed, it's time to tune in. We're going to try to get 10 viewers on YouTube as CK is live in studio. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Otis Redding on.
And find a complimentary center back who doesn't lose his cool every 3 or 4 games.
No spitting at people.
Correct.
All right, Trey, you're welcome. There's your 2 minutes of RSL talk on a Thursday in December when everyone wants to talk football. All right, Chris, you know the tone and tenor of the Utah football program. You're well aware of the storylines. 0 for 2 on the offensive coordinator front as of now. Jason Beck is a name that's really making a lot of rounds today. I don't know, man. Where are you at with it?
I guess I'll start by saying the Utah football fan base needs to take a step back and understand where it sits in the landscape of college football. And I say that because people that I know have been telling me they're upset Utah got outbid or whatever by Texas Tech for an offensive coordinator. We need to break this down, guys. If you're a Utah football fan for the last 20 years, you need to understand that the last 20 years of Utah football compared to the last 20 years of Texas Tech football are basically two polar opposites. Texas Tech football for the last 20 years, it's a game allowing 40 or 50 points a game. Utah football scoring 20 points a game, allowing 13 or 14 points a game on the whole. It should not come as a surprise that an offensive coordinator from Texas who played college football in Texas, who is currently an offensive coordinator in the Lone Star State, would want to go be the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech over Utah.
Right.
Let's put that out there.
Yeah.
And I did my homework.
You always do. You always do.
Utah's offense, top 20 in the country. How many times in the last 20 years has Utah been top 20 overall in offense?
I'm going to say twice.
3 times.
3 times.
2 out of those 3 years, who was the offensive coordinator?
Andy Ludwig.
The other one, Urban Meyer, Dan Mullen.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, how many times top 20 offense since 2000?
I'm going to guess 12, 13.
11.
Okay.
Yep. How many 1,000-yard wide receivers has Utah had in the last 20 years?
1.
3. Drez.
Yep. He was the last one.
David Reed in 2009. Paris War in 2004.
Ah, yes. Okay.
How many 1,000-yard receivers have been at Texas Tech since 2004?
More than 20?
15.
15.
So, I know there are so many other data points that we can point to, but that is the start and pretty much end in terms of a conversation of what Utah's thought to be from an offensive standpoint in college football.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about Texas Tech, yes, For how many of those years was Mike Leach changing college football? A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty of guys who came after him that were able to make Texas Tech a top 10 to 20 offense.
Yeah.
So Utah football fans need to understand where they stand in the landscape of things. And yes, it is an uncomfortable situation that they're in right now between, Morgan Scallon, Kyle Whittingham. I understand that there's a lot of stuff in play, but man, you lose out to Oklahoma, which is fine. And I don't see losing out to Texas Tech as a huge indictment on the program. It's just an indictment on what the offense has been at Utah for 20 years. It's just been so up and down.
Well, and to your point, it's not like, it's not like this is a gentleman. It's not like Mac Leftwich is from Draper. I mean, he wants to stay home.
It's
He's a
easy
Texas
to
guy.
recruit Texas guys if
sure.
you're in Texas,
Yeah.
especially Texas Tech that has historical precedent with being a tremendously successful offensive program.
Yeah. Like the wailing and gnashing of teeth today has been a little bit odd. I agree with you. I said this earlier, opening tip. I know you're a fan. This is not an indictment on Utah football. I'm not stunned that a Texas guy wanted to stay in Texas, and I'm sure they paid him just fine. Do you have any names that you've heard that you think are a natural fit? Like, how do you think this thing ends up going?
I don't know of I know one guy who would have been great. His name's Andy Ludwig.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I think I'm so, like, amongst the things that Kyle and, everybody have done in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I know they say that Andy stepped away at his own volition. I have a very hard time
man.
believing that.
Yeah.
That is the most surprising thing that I can remember happening under Kyle's tenure as head coach, happening in the middle of the year when you have a tremendous rash of injuries at the quarterback position. I don't know who's a natural fit. Jason Beck, who was a backup quarterback, I think, at BYU for Bronco Mendenhall, who now is the offensive coordinator for Bronco Mendenhall. I guess I would turn it on you, Spence, and say, what is a natural fit at this point? Because whoever this offensive coordinator will be, I think will be the 10th offensive coordinator that Kyle will have in 20 years.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah. I feel like if somebody else has talked about this or somebody else has written about it, I just simply haven't seen it or heard it. And I know once you taste the meals on NFL charters, you want to live in that ecosystem. But according to the numbers we saw earlier, Brian Johnson makes $660,000 a year. Coach Ludd,
he's not coming back.
Period.
No.
Coach Ludd made what, $2 million? Close to $2 million?
I think Andy was at 1.8.
Okay, so essentially you're still tripling your salary.
Yeah.
But Jaden Daniels is awesome. Passing game coordinator, assistant head coach in Washington. And I tend to side with. It was like the whole Alex Jensen is going to take the Utah job. I'm like, dude, the NBA, man, once you're there, you don't want to deal with college at all. And maybe Brian simply does not want to deal with college football at all. Maybe he views his spot with Washington with a great young quarterback as a natural path to maybe being his own head coach at some point. But do you make the phone call at least? Do you kick the tires?
I don't think so.
All right.
I don't know what the how the relationship ended when he left for, I think he left for Mississippi State.
Correct.
And he was the quarterback coach for Dak Prescott. The job, the existence is so much more difficult and draining and taxing now compared to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, for $2 million, is it worth it to some people? Probably. Is it worth it to Brian Johnson? Maybe. But you're working for Cliff Kingsbury. You're probably going to get another shot at being an offensive coordinator in the NFL,
mm-hmm.
which is, more prestigious and easier life and job for yourself and your family. In college football now, you are recruiting your own play. You're trying to get your guys to sign a 1-year contract every single year.
Mm-hmm.
That is exhausting.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm not knocking it, but that is the reality that, these coaches face now. And I don't know, does Brian Johnson want to drop everything? I mean, he's cultivated in the NFL the last few years to come back to call plays for a guy that he knows really well. And yes, Brian was thrust into it at a very young age, and you can probably make an argument that it was too young at the time, and he probably had a lot more to learn. But it's hard, man. Listen, Kyle Whittingham is, a legend, and we can throw out all those adjectives that you want. He's earned the statue. He's earned the name of the stadium, whatever you want to give it to him. But the offense has been a thorn in his side, and it has been for 20 years. There's a reason why there's going to be 10 offensive play callers. I think Kyle is the type of guy that wants everything, but also nothing at the same time. And by that, I mean he wants a mobile quarterback. He wants to be able to control the game on the ground. He wants a great offensive line. He wants to be a spread-style offense, but not throw it too much. So how are you going to recruit wide receivers who don't get the ball that much to play in a spread offense? It's difficult. And then our guy Porter, Spence, you guys are 12, 13, 14 personnel guys.
Oh, you know it.
Utah's going to play with 19 tight ends.
Yeah.
That means you're not going to be able to recruit wide receivers to come play for you.
Yeah.
Everything came together for Utah in 21 and 22 because they had a great quarterback, they had an impressive running back room, and they had a good defense. And they had before Brant got hurt, they had 2 NFL tight ends.
Yeah.
But now you're basically looking at a total rebuild with a head coach in waiting situation that is up in the air. Quarterback room, you need a starter. Starter's not there. You don't have a running back one. You don't have many wide receivers coming back. Brant Keithy's not coming back. I know state-run media at Utah is going to tell you that the next big guy is already in the room, but you have to see it on the field, man. You just have to see it on the field. Yeah. College football now, Spence, is in a place where it's like the NFL. The offseason is almost more exciting and more like tantalizing than the actual season for a lot of fans because they get so amped up.
Yeah.
It's now such a day-to-day conversation, whereas it used to be bowl game ends, everyone goes home till spring ball or off-season, lifting. Spring ball happens, it ends, everyone goes home. They come back for summer conditioning, the fall camp starts, so on and so forth. Now it's, players are posting, Utah man am I'm coming back, which is, great for the program. But fans are kind of waiting at bated breath to see who's going to come back basically every single day, which is the NFLification of college football.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I don't think the answer under center is in that room right now. Unless Christopher, Cam Rising decides that he wants to come back. So if we take Kyle at his word, what he has said to the media is this is Cameron's choice. What do you think Kyle does if he gets a phone call and Cam says, hey, I got to talk to you, and rolls into Coach Witt's office and says, hey, got some NIL money, so I feel good about it, and I've decided to come back for one more year. What do you think Kyle says? Does he just open the door like he said he would? It's his choice?
I mean, I think if you're Kyle and if you're Utah, you have to see how Cam is physically. I mean, obviously, if Cam's going to make that decision, in theory, he feels good about where he's at. But that's a big if right now. I mean, the guy has had, a tremendous amount of bad luck injury-wise, but he's going to be 26 next year. What are the other quarterback options? Like, if we've learned anything about the last 2 years, if Cam comes back, it's going to be tremendously difficult to recruit another starting caliber quarterback with experience to come in and compete with Cam. And maybe that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's Kyle's answer.
Yeah.
We're going to go out to the portal and we're going to spend $1 million on another kid to come in and compete with you. And are you okay with that? That's what I think he would say.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the wise course of action because the other thing that's been very obvious, despite all of the conversation around the market that they were better suited this time around should Cameron go down, they weren't. They weren't ready. They weren't ready last year. Brandon Rose got hurt last year. We always have to bring that up. It wasn't just Cam, it was Brandon. But they weren't ready last year, and then they just should have known better that they needed better contingency plans in place should Cameron go down. Because the other thing I didn't buy is, well, we've coached him differently, and he's going to – no, he's not going to play differently. Like the whole he's going to play safer lasted for a game and a half, and then suddenly we're talking about the same thing. So even if Cam comes back, CK, to your point, I do think a veteran QB who has some skin in the game – that you're comfortable with also needs to be added to the room based off of what we've seen on the field.
And which veteran quarterback who has the established statistical background to prove that he can compete against Cam does that person even want to come to Salt Lake? That's the ultimate question because I think most logical quarterbacks would say Cam will have the inside track. He is beloved in the locker room, beloved by the fan base, beloved by the coaching staff. If I come in, I'm going to have basically everything going against me. So is it worth it? But then you talk about the offensive coordinator hire. Like, does this new offensive coordinator, whoever he is, does he want to bring a quarterback with him? What type of style of football does he want to play? The layers to this are tremendously deep.
And if we operate off the hypothetical that Cameron does decide to come back, and Kyle adds a veteran QB via the portal, does Isaac bounce? Is he gone? Does he just leave?
Oh, I mean, like you can't
shuffling of the
fault
chairs.
any kid
Yeah.
for getting into the portal anymore. Reason, because that's the reality of the game now.
Yeah.
But I think with Isaac last year, this is just my opinion, I think a lot of it was maybe overcompensating for missing out on Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Zach tear it up at your rival, go to the NFL. And you have to keep highly recruited quarterbacks happy for as long as you can. So, like, I think Isaac was their highest recruited quarterback out of high school since, like, Jack Tuttle, like, 7 years ago. I mean, I'm sure it was neck and neck between he and Brandon Rose in camp, but, like, if you believe that Isaac Wilson is the future, like, you're going to give it to the guy who you believe and want to keep happy that can lead you there. But, again, you got to see – I mean, we were outside Smith's in, like, September.
Yes, we were.
It was after the Oklahoma State game.
It's a lovely day outside.
It was amazing. I was in
Nice.
shorts
Yes,
and
you
my
were.
hippie sandals and like,
sunglasses.
it was amazing. We
Yeah, it
had
was.
that like cool gold Corona cooler
We
or
did.
something we were
Yeah.
giving away.
Lovely
and
day. Lovely day.
And I said, like, Isaac is gonna take his lumps eventually, man. And like I'm not patting myself on the back. You just have to be realistic.
Yeah.
College football is not run by true freshman quarterbacks. How many true freshman quarterbacks in the last 20 years have we like been blown away by that eventually lead? Like maybe they get there eventually. Like Trevor Lawrence, I guess, is like the one that comes to mind. I don't even know if Tua was a true freshman when he stepped in for Jalen Hurts, but like that was like the end of the season.
Yeah.
Just saying, man. Like Utah has to figure out its quarterback room. It needs to figure out its OC. The running back is probably 1C because like if you're going to be good, if you're going to be a good Utah offense, you have to have somebody who can rush for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
And Mekhi Bernard got there. He was their most important and best player this year. But there was no depth there, and they have to be able to cultivate that again.
All right, last thing, then we'll catch a break. We'll do another segment coming up on the other side. You referenced the, awkward dynamic right now with Kyle and Morgan and coach and waiting. The way I'm reading this, the tea leaves is, because there's been no announcement, I believe Kyle's coming back. He's a coach under contract. You don't need a press conference when you're a coach under contract. You're just doing your job. Utah football releases a recruiting video yesterday. There's Coach Witt at his desk doing the work. Do you read it the same? Do you believe because Kyle doesn't strike me as a wishy-washy guy. Like if he knew he was done, I think he would tell everybody and just bounce. Where are you at right now in that dynamic?
I agree with you. The one example I would point to is when Nick Saban retired, it came out of nowhere, like in January. And I know Alabama had a playoff run, so I know that's a little different. But like, I'm just painting a hypothetical here, and I'm not saying this is his train of thought. But if they get through the next few weeks and hire somebody that Kyle is really stoked on, and a guy who can bring in a high-profile quarterback, maybe that only balloons his desire to come back. If we get to the end of January and they don't have like a quarterback in place and Cam decides to go elsewhere, I mean it would be easy for Kyle to say maybe it's time.
Yeah.
But again, to your point, he doesn't strike me as that type of person. And I know these are the only types of conversations that go on behind closed doors. I will say just one real thing before we take a break. It was odd that he didn't have a press conference yesterday because he usually always has a press conference on signing day.
Yeah, it's true.
And I know they were doing the interviews with the OC position, but I think sooner or later it would behoove everybody up there for him or Morgan to get in front of a microphone to explain to people what's going on.
It's a really good point, actually. I hadn't considered that because he does do a press conference on signing day every year. All right, we'll catch a quick break. I want to tell you about my friends at Clearwater Distilling. It's the only distillery in Utah County, open on Sundays. Great spirits, tasting room, nicest crew around. They've got their Wednesday whiskey batch number 2 right now. It's a limited release. It's a mix of their bourbon and rye whiskeys. Try their Scandalous, the Renee, or the vodka. They are our VIP ESPN tailgate spirits provider. Obviously, no more tailgates, but definitely check out their spot. It's really cool. You can do a tour and tasting in their Victorian tasting room. Makes for a great date night or a fun activity anytime. Authentic, vintage, prohibition prescriptions and decor. Ultra premium spirits, many with a unique twist. You can buy their spirits in state liquor stores, online, or take a trip to the distillery where you can grab some booze and some local cigars and immerse yourself in the Clearwater distilling culture. More information can be found online at clearwaterdistilling.com. Their location is 564 West, 700 South in Pleasant Grove. More with CK coming up next right here on ESPN 700. This is a throwback. I'm just picturing Leonardo DiCaprio running on a beach shirtless. Little Moby.
Underrated flick.
Underrated
Danny
flick,
Boyle.
Underrated song.
Yes.
Although, isn't he canceled? I thought he was canceled.
I just remember that Eminem made fun of him back in the day.
We need John Paul on this. JP.
He's listening.
Oh, of course he is.
Text in.
JP, text in. You know what?
800
Actually, JP, call in right now. Let's see if he's listening. He'll call in. We're going to get JP on air to tell us if Moby's canceled.
Excited.
Because whenever I have a question about someone being canceled, I ask John Paul.
And then me second.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you guys are like my North Stars. Yeah. My favorite text thread is you and Falk because you're the angel on one shoulder and
we're here.
Falk's the devil on the other side.
We're here.
So I'm looking to kind of combine the advice from both of you to see how I need to move forward in my life.
The truth is always in the middle, Spence.
It is. 877-353-0700. JP, if you're listening, call in and let us know if Moby's canceled. All right, Chris Camerati live in studio. Let's see. Last Utah football thing, then we'll move on. So we had Gordon on earlier, asked him this question. I don't know how to phrase it correctly. Here's how I'll ask it. Are you confident that this season for Utah football was a blip on the radar, a moment in time, or is there a danger that this program might be slipping a little bit?
I mean, we all spoke about this last offseason. We thought there's no way for a second year in a row they could go through the stuff that they did in 2023, injury-wise, and they did.
Yeah, they did.
I don't think beyond the injuries, I don't think the program is slipping. You can look at their recruiting base off of yesterday. I think they were 5th in the Big 12 out of 16 teams.
Top 40 class.
Top 40 class.
Yep.
So they're recruiting well, but I mean it's the tale as old as time, man. Utah's defense will always be good. They will find diamonds in the rough. Who's their quarterback? Who's their play caller? Who's their running back? I know I said that a lot last segment, but like it's just the truth, man. Like when you can make an argument even that like the running back is like 1B because Utah, even when they've had rough offenses, the running back and the offensive line have always led them to 8-4, 9-3.
Yep.
Seriously, like so. I know state-run media is going to tell you that the guys on the roster are it. I don't think so. I think they need to go into the portal and spend a lot of money on a quarterback, and they need to spend a lot of money on a running back. What is going for them right now is they locked up those 2 offensive tackles.
Yeah, that's big.
You can make an argument that they're the 2 best young tackles in the country playing on the same line.
Yep.
Which is huge. I mean, a lot of people think those guys are going to be like potential first, second day NFL draft picks. So the fact that they're back for one more year is huge for them. Who they're going to be blocking for in the backfield, we have to see.
So we had Matt Brown, who writes the college football newsletter Extra
Not my
Points.
Matt Brown, the other Matt
Not
Brown.
your Matt Brown. Matt Brown, who writes Extra Points. Nice guy, good interview. It's a good newsletter.
Smart, very smart.
Very smart guy. Sometimes you just kind of have to sit back. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Really good with the business of college football, kind of off-field stuff. And he flew into Provo to do a piece. It was a really fun piece on BYU fans who tailgate.
I was jealous.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Yeah, a great story. He did a good job. And he had a really interesting point about how BYU found their success this year and whether or not that's a model you can continue to use moving forward. Because, Matt, according to his sources, the NIL support that Kalani's getting isn't really dialed in. It's not that, it's not why they were able to find success this year.
It's not KY money.
It is not Kevin Young money. Shout out to DA. Shout out to my guy, Rye. I should put my hat on backwards. But, his points, I think, were founded in a lot of evidence, proof of concept this year, a one-year success story. But unless they start to get the NIL support that his peers are getting, it's hard to believe that what they did this year is sustainable. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts on it?
I'm of the mind, Spence, that BYU should be a top 5 funded program for the obvious reason. And I know that the church is never going to pour their own resources into it, but you can make an argument that because the footprint of the Big 12 is so big, the fact that they go to so many different states and areas and regions in the country, like there's a reason why BYU fans show out to every road game is because there's BYU fans all over the country and world.
Yep.
like at the Tribune, man, like BYU stories were always the most read because it's not only people in Utah, it's people all over the country and world.
Yeah, the world is our campus, CK. Enter to learn, go forth to serve.
So my argument would be it should be very easy for them to be able to have deep resources in NIL for obvious reasons. I don't think that's going to be the case. Matt's point is well taken. They're eventually going to have to get there. They absolutely will, because I don't think you're always going to get really talented legacy kids to go there. I mean, like the Connor Pays, those kids, I mean, hopefully they're getting paid, but like you're going to get those legacy kids whose parents and uncles and brothers played there. But I mean, you're going to need those Darius Lassiters, the Jake Retzloffs, the Keelan Marions, who's the linebacker, Harrison Taggart's. Like, I know he's a local kid, but like you're going to have to get those guys not only to commit and play, but you're going to have to find a way to retain them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to re-up everybody every single year, no matter who you are in college football.
And no matter how much you love BYU, if you're a blue chip prospect making, I don't know, $100K at BYU, and you're one of their better players, and another school calls and says, we'll offer you $450, $500K, it doesn't matter how much you love BYU. You're going at some point to follow the money, at least a little bit. But I want to echo your sentiment, because I said this like day one when NIL kind of became a reality. I felt like this was awesome news for Brigham Young because of all of their alums. I thought some Silicon Slopes bro in a Tesla or a truck would be very, very
Tesla truck.
Or a Tesla truck, probably a Tesla truck actually, would salivate at the option of being like the savior of BYU football financially. And my guy Rye has stepped up for has stepped up for the basketball program. But I thought one of these bros would have stepped up by now. And I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more financial support.
It is surprising. And like the Marriotts, man, like what are we doing? Like there are so many people who are tied to that. I know at the Marriott Center, I get it. But like there are so many like high-profile business people around the world who have ties to BYU. I mean, that's a good question. That's probably a story I should pursue. To be honest with you, I mean, like I know we're idea generating on the drive Monday to Friday 2 to 6, but like, why aren't they there yet? I don't know. It's a great question.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's going to come from Ensign Peak Advisors, and I know like LDS people, kind of like the LDS Church, have a reputation for not necessarily opening up their pocketbooks all the time. But you don't need billions of dollars here. You know, I think the support that BYU football needs is well within the means of a lot of alumni that love BYU football.
It would be a drop in the bucket, man. It would be a drop in the bucket. But having lived here for a long time, having worked at the Tribune, it's not exactly an easy group of people to get a hold from a PR point of view.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I think my buddies who are active members, who are huge BYU fans, still to this day are amazed that 60 Minutes got like those interviews a couple of years ago. Because they are notoriously very hard to get a hold of. If I were ever to get a hold of them, I would love to ask them this question, because it would be a drop in the bucket.
No, yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, let's stay in this space a little bit. We had Gordon on earlier, Gordon Monson, Salt Lake Tribune, our friend, my friend, your friend. And, Gordon wrote a piece about the BYU basketball team back on the road at Providence. And it's not the first time we've heard a F the Mormons chants from a student section or a fan base directed at Brigham Young, not the man, well, in this case, but the football program. But obviously you're blanketing an entire group of people with an F the Mormons chant. As somebody who is familiar with the religious ethos that dominates the community here and family ties, but not a member yourself, if that's fair to say on air, if that's okay to say on air. How does this land with you? I don't love the whataboutisms, but ultimately it does feel like this is more, I guess I'll say, societally acceptable than most anti-religious chants you would hear. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
I think we are siloed here in this state still from a national perspective. It's so funny, like, when I was back in California for Thanksgiving, everybody was over at my sister's house, and there were, family friends on my brother-in-law's side who were over, and I met a brother and a sister. The brother works in New York, stock bro. Sister's a lawyer in LA, brother never heard, didn't like Utah.
Yeah.
What is it like? Sister loves it. She's like, me and my friends go out there every summer, every winter. People don't know about it. That to me is like the perfect encapsulation of like how we are viewed here. Some people still kind of like take a step back and like raise their eyebrows, like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Oh,
there?
for sure.
And then other people are like, when they come here, they love it. So that's a long-winded way of saying I just think a lot of people still hold these unfortunate, very negative, very low-hanging fruit stereotypes, and it's unfortunate because it should not be accepted. And it's just, I know we're getting into cultural dichotomies here on
The Drive,
show.
Monday through Friday, 2 to 6. You know the deal.
I just think, unfortunately, a lot of people nationally who don't know about the state and don't know a lot about the culture here think it's very easy to pick on for obvious reasons.
Well, it's well said, and I'll tell you this, man. From my experience of Federal Heights, Salt Lake City, Bountiful, 11-year-old Spence Checketts going 2,000 miles across the country to move to the Northeast, where the LDS church footprint in the Northeast has grown. But I'm talking 1989, where there were very few members of the church, and my family moves back there, and I was stunned at how we were viewed by my peers in school and their parents. And I just wasn't familiar with the oddities of the culture that people aren't comfortable with as a kid. And I learned that being basically planted in a place where there were like 2 LDS kids in my school outside of my sister and I, right?
Yeah.
And so suddenly I went from Salt Lake City, where we are the majority, to a place where you really felt like a cast-off because of the way that people viewed the culture in which you were brought up. But I think there's a way to disagree with certain approaches of the church without being outright abusive with chants like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's low-hanging fruit. It's rhetoric that is learned second and third hand. I mean, like, how many of these people who are doing this even know members of the church?
Yeah.
I would guarantee not many. Maybe they've heard this type of approach to how people treat members of the church through their friends or family members or whatever. And it's just like it's not acceptable, and it's just it is weird in that, like, this happens almost every year, whether it's in basketball or football, and it seems to kind of slide under the radar. I mean, I can't remember. There was a football game.
It was Oregon.
Yeah, it was Oregon. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was Oregon.
Yeah.
And it also kind of fires up the persecution complex portion of the culture.
Yep.
But then you understand why they feel this way, right? And I, from my vantage point, and the reason I have the main issue with a chant like this, I feel like the culture is comprised of mostly nice people who work hard, family-orientated, and care about their communities. Are there members of the LDS Church and certain approaches of the LDS Church that make people uncomfortable? Yeah. It doesn't make it different from other religions, if we're being fair, but I just feel like chants like this blanket a culture of mostly very decent people from my experience, even though I'm not actively involved in it like I was as a kid. And I feel like that's what's unfair, just blanketing everybody like that.
I think it's also, unfortunately, a snapshot of where we are as a society and a culture.
How it's acceptable.
How it's acceptable, and how, while we've made strides in so many other places, I think it's just still so easy to fall in love with that mob mentality in a sporting event setting like that, which is unacceptable. But again, it's something that needs to be addressed, and I don't know why it necessarily hasn't from the governing bodies of these conferences. I know the Providence AD wrote a tweet or something afterwards, but it is something that it's unfortunate that, I mean, some of these kids on the team aren't even LDS.
Right.
A lot of the kids on the team aren't even LDS.
Right.
So it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. All right, one more thing here. I'm not going to ask you for a CK scouting breakdown of Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey.
Oh, I'm ready.
But I will ask
Ron
you.
Harper Jr.
Yeah, and apparently Mr. Harper is not excited at the possibility of his son playing here. But anyway, neither here nor there. I will ask you this. This might be the worst team we've had here, like ever. I really feel that way. Oklahoma City's awesome, but they're lazy. Their habits are bad. Defensively, they're a sieve. They don't do anything well, and they're just not going to win a lot of games. how do you think it's landing around town? It feels like, I usually love to cover the NBA. I usually love to cover the Jazz. My whole life has been around the Jazz. But even my friends who are the most diehard Jazz fans this year, they're just kind of like, meh. How do you think it's going to land around here with a season like this and it's not turning around anytime soon?
Well, I mean, this is a lot of fans wanted this. They wanted to avoid the middle, and this is what you get. This is not death by 1,000 cuts. It's death by 1 billion cuts throughout a very long season. And if it means it gets you closer to a Cooper flag, that's great. I do maintain my opinion that this should have happened 2 years ago because the really ungettable player was the guy who's now wearing that jersey in San Antonio. But I just don't. I'm with you. It's just not it's not even a topic of conversation anymore. Yeah. And I don't know what the turnout is like. I haven't watched any games this year. I know that some people are up in arms that veterans are playing over young guys and that some guys are being assigned to the stars and not doing this or that. But this is part of it. This is the NBA is set up this way, and if you are diluted enough to not believe that this is part of the growing pains, and I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Have you ever interviewed my guy Rye?
I have not.
You have not?
Nope.
I wonder, I would be interested in a CK Rye sit down because I just wonder how this is landing with him. I don't know him well. Our interactions have always been pleasant. He's always been nice to me, but I don't know him. But from what I've been told, he's a competitive dude who was very eager to add some very good veteran pieces as soon as he possibly could. The whole, we're going to sign Paul George and trade for Mikal Bridges thing, I'm like, dude, don't say things like that out loud. That was never going to be possible. We always talk about Danny and Justin. I wonder how this is landing with Ryan because they're far from being even decent.
I mean, he's a basketball lifer. He's a Jazz lifer. I think he's a smart enough guy to know that this is part of the growing pains that come with trying to build a contender in the NBA from the ground up. The Jazz fan base has never dealt with this since. I mean, I watched the documentary, man. Even those late 70s, early 80s teams had some star players on that team. Not trying to discount Lauri Markkanen at all, but we're in a place now. If you're a Jazz fan, that most people have never been before.
Yeah.
So I think he understands that this is just the nature of building in the NBA. I think it's why the NBA, in my opinion, has fallen kind of out of favor with, I think, a lot of people in my generation and people younger because, it's so top heavy and it's just kind of why would you want to spend money and why would you want to wait so long to have a decent product on the floor when you know that it may not even happen?
Yeah. Well, CK, we'll always have college football off season. Leo, ready for Santa?
I gotta go Christmas shopping.
Yeah, you got to do it. All right, brother. Good to see you, okay?
Thanks, man.
The great Chris Comrani from The Athletic. Time now to catch up with our friends at Sports Court. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How are we doing?
Hey, Spence. Happy Thursday.
Appreciate the time today. Let's get into it. Hello. All right. We'll try to call them back. Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy just hanging up on us prior to their hit today. The 5 o'clock hour of the drive, we'll get back to some of the college football conversation. No official news about the offensive coordinator at the University of Utah. We've been talking about that throughout the course of the show today. According to sources, Bill Belichick is interviewing with North Carolina about their vacant head coach position. So kind of some interesting news there. But 5 o'clock hour, we'll discuss early signing day yesterday. Transfer portal opens in a matter of days, 4 days. And the latest on the search for the University of Utah offensive coordinator position. We started things off today with Gavin Peterson. Fun conversation with the head coach of the Utah women's basketball team after their dominant win against Utah State at the Delta Center last night. Kind of a fun experience for some of the local players who grew up watching the Jazz to play in the Delta Center. So started things off with Gavin today. If you missed that, that was fun. Craig Bolerjack live in Portland. The Utah Jazz are in the midst of a long, long road trip, so Bowler stopped by. Discussed all the local college football storylines with Gordon Monson from the Salt Lake Tribune. Then a 45-minute sit-down with our guy Chris Kamrani. So that's dominated the portion of the show today. Don't forget, we have some Thursday night football. Thursday night football tonight. It's the Packers and the Lions live from Ford Field in Detroit. You can hear that game on this little old radio station before we, after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock. So Thursday night football, and of course, NCAA football gets rolling tomorrow with championship weekend, both on Friday and Saturday. BYU at this point looks like it's the Alamo Bowl, likely against Colorado, but there are some scenarios in play that could change that depending on the outcome of the Big 12 championship game, which is Iowa State and Arizona State down in Texas, Arlington, AT&T Stadium. That line has not moved at all. Arizona State is a 2-point favorite in that game over Iowa State. Coming up tomorrow, UNLV Boise State. If you are a Big 12 fan, you want to be cheering for Vegas. You want to be cheering for UNLV. So, all right, let's try it again. Garrett, Preston, Handy. Gentlemen, are you there? All right, we'll catch a break. More coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program, Drive at 5, Gordon Monson. But take 3 with our friends, Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, are you there?
We're here.
Hey, Spence.
All right.
Deja vu.
All right, all good, all good. So the first story, kind of a sad one, quite frankly. Baker Mayfield is suing his dad, $11.7 million, alleging that his father's company failed to pay back stolen funds. Update us here.
Yeah, I would have loved to be at that Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm guessing that they weren't in the same sitting at the same table. But yeah, the backstory to this is from 2018 to 2021. Emily and Baker Mayfield and their investment company, their LLC, Team BRM, had invested money with James and Matt Mayfield, brother and father of Baker, and their company, Camwood Capital Management Group. They'd invested money, I think, all in good faith and thinking that they'd get a return and these things would go into certain investments. Well, over time, things weren't happening. They found out that there'd been a misappropriation of funds. They weren't getting a proper accounting. Things were being pulled from accounts and even to pay payroll. So there was a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul. They were grabbing money from him and doing other things with them. So what happened was I think they sat down and got it. And so you think that's the story, they got to prove that. Well, they really don't have to prove that because they got together and apparently they reached an agreement, a written agreement with Camwood Capital Management Group that, yeah, we owe you this money, $12 million, and we need to set up a schedule to pay it. Well, lo and behold, they didn't pay it back. So now it's turned into a breach of contract claim where really I don't think they have to, if they've got it down in writing that, yeah, we owe this money and here's what the agreement is, I don't think they have to really prove what happened in the background and how the money was misappropriated. Now it's just a simple breach of contract claim, which probably would include a claim for attorney's fees on top of it. So what they're doing is suing now, and they have to go ahead and prove this and try and recover their money.
All right, Garrett, you're up, buddy.
Well, yeah, it is a strange case because, there's a lot going on kind of that we have to read between the lines to figure this out. But like Preston said, it seems like just a lawsuit over enforcing that prior settlement agreement. And the Mayfield's dad and brother apparently don't have the money or whatever to pay it because they had earlier agreed. So we'll follow it.
So the latest now on the Mountain West and the Pac-12 going at each other in court. Pac-12 is looking for the dismissal of what's called a poaching penalty lawsuit. Fill us in here.
Yeah, what the lawsuit really, and again, I think every sports lawyer's favorite cause of action is antitrust. And so on behalf of the Pac-12, they brought this lawsuit against the Mountain West over these poaching penalties. And so, of course, the Pac-12 and the Mountain West had entered into a scheduling agreement so that Oregon State and Washington State could play games and be part of a conference that was going to qualify for FBS football. But what ended up happening is, as part of that scheduling agreement, there were some penalties because the Mountain West, I think, was looking at this and realizing, hey, the Pac-12 may come along here and try to cherry pick and poach some of our schools, which is exactly what happened. And so in this scheduling agreement, there were penalties for those things. And so now, the Pac-12 shows up with this lawsuit that they filed in September to say, well, wait a minute, these penalties, it's too much. It makes it unfair, and we can't compete, right? And that's where the antitrust part of this comes into play, is saying, hey, there's got to be competition between schools and conferences, and these penalties that we're facing, these poaching penalties, make it so that we can't compete. So they brought this lawsuit. The Mountain West has just filed a motion to dismiss. This is why it's kind of back in the news, a motion to dismiss, and saying, hey, this really has nothing to do with antitrust.
All right, Preston, over to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Mountain West Conference is on more solid ground here because it's a typical case of the Pac-12 entered into an agreement, and now where the agreement's being laid out there and you took our schools and you have to pay, you agreed to this, they don't want to pay. And I think an interesting argument that the Mountain West Conference made against the Pac-12's antitrust theories, they said, hey, wait a minute, you could have competed here. There are 100+ other schools you could have gone and brought into your Pac-12, but yet you came to us, the Mountain West Conference, who you'd had an agreement with that you wouldn't do it. So, yeah, your argument on antitrust is misguided.
All right, another situation where a basketball player is being alleged to be in on the fix, as they say. This time, University of Temple, I believe it's Heiser Miller, allegations that he manipulated and bet on his own games. Guys, fill us in here.
Yeah, let me see if I can nail this. So we got Heiser Miller, who apparently is a really pretty good guard. He fills up the stat box. And just one game, and, you've got these gambling watchdog groups that we saw in the case with Jonte Porter. They look at these things, and it was a game against Alabama Birmingham, I guess. No game that's really going to hit anyone's radar. No one's watching this game, but there is the Temple Owls are 1-point dogs in this. Well, the morning, sometime before the game, all of a sudden they're noted as 7 or 8 point underdogs, and everybody said, "Whoa, hold the phone! What happened? No injured players. Nothing happened." They halted any betting coming on this. Well, the game went through that night, and guess what? Our guy Heiser Miller, he didn't fill up the box, and there's talk that he was averaging between 25 and 30 points a game in a lot of the contests that year, and so he had a poor night. Didn't shoot many shots, 3 of 14 shots. He had a bunch of turnovers. And what happened? The Temple Owls lost by a sizable amount. They lost by 20, 25 points. Well, now the federal authorities are investigating this. They're jumping in to see was there some type of conspiracy to commit bribery in betting, and they're looking into this now. And they haven't filed charges yet, but he does have a lawyer, which tells you that he's on notice of this. And if it goes down the road, there's a lot of this Jonte Porter. We know that he's been banned from the NBA for I can't remember the specifics on his, but these gambling watchdogs, they see this stuff, and they see it pretty well, and it raises a lot of red flags. So we'll see what happens on this. He transferred to West Virginia, and guess what happened when this came out? Was it Virginia Tech maybe? And they said, "Hey, Mr. Miller, we don't want you playing for us this year. There's too much attached to you." So we'll see if he gets charged, and there could be some civil penalties as well.
All right, Garrett, you're up, buddy.
I think we're just going to keep seeing cases like this with how common and easy sports gambling's become. So we'll be on the lookout for it.
All right, over to the world of Major League Baseball now. Shohei Ohtani, I am just learning about this in real time. He looks like he's going to try to get some baseball cards that were taken from him. So go ahead and fill us in here.
Yeah, and I guess not just some baseball cards, but about $325,000 worth of baseball cards. And so this stems out of the case with his interpreter, who, stole nearly $17 million of Shohei Ohtani's money. And so as part of that, he bought all of these baseball cards and these collectibles. And so as part of his guilty plea in that investigation, the government seized those assets and those cards. And so now Shohei Ohtani, they've filed a motion essentially to intervene in that case and say, well, hang on, he bought those cards with my money, and so I should get the cards back. He's not going to, really be able to ever recover what he's lost from this, but this is a small part of it, and so seems like I think a pretty solid argument that he should be entitled to at least those cards and to try to recoup some of his losses.
Man, keep your enemies close and your friends closer. Goodness gracious. Preston, over to you, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is evidence in the prosecution case, and it makes sense. Hey, this was my money to pay for it. I'm worried about Shohei right now. We might want to be on the lookout for him down at the soup kitchen if he doesn't get this money.
Yeah, I think he's going to be just fine. But all right, over to this.
He's gonna be okay.
Yeah, for sure. Over to the next story, and I have some thoughts. Kyrie Irving reportedly is being sued by his therapist for $400K in unpaid bills. First of all, I have some questions for Kyrie Irving's therapist. Let's start there. But second of all, over to you. Fill us in. What's going on?
Well, I want to hear your questions after because they're going to be great. Well, Kyrie Irving, who we know he's always got stuff going on, and if you're one of his 150 favorite friends, you got invited to a wellness retreat, which included comprehensive health wellness services, including guided mediation sessions, foot baths, intuitive life readings. And so all these people were there, and, this therapist who he has used for years, she's pretty high priced. Well, plans on getting paid a lot of money. There's a contract, and going into this, what happens? Someone dies at it, and there's not a lot of specifics on it, but her services kind of ramped up, and she claims that not only was she provided grief counseling, she provided all kinds of things to help with this, and served as a liaison between the authorities. And through all this, she outlines, and I won't go through them, a list of all the charges that should have been paid for her services, and it amounted to about $400,000. Well, she hasn't been paid a dime of it, and she claims, I've been working with him since 2020, and I always got paid. Well, and his stance was he hasn't really said anything, but said, hey, this is other people that agreed to this, and so she has sued him, basically suing him for, breach of contract, probably unjust enrichment for her services and that type of thing. And so this just barely hit. So I just saw it today, and we'll see what happens.
All right, Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, the list of charges for this retreat, like Preston said, for 150 of Kyrie's favorite friends and family. I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, the charges here, but I mean, I'm got to assume they've got a contract, for the services she was going to provide, and so however inflated it may be, again, this is a case where I'm looking at it going, what is going on in the background here, and why hasn't he paid this bill? Because like we just talked about with Shohei, he's got the money, right? He can do it. So we'll see how it develops.
All right, final one for today. It's an update on a situation that has garnered a lot of headlines locally and nationally with the transgender volleyball player in the Mountain West Conference, and we do have a resolution as of now. So fill us in.
Yeah, and this is a resolution regarding this kind of emergency relief that the plaintiffs in this case wanted, and basically they filed this at kind of the last minute right before the Mountain West volleyball tournament, and they wanted to prevent this transgender player from participating in the tournament and playing, and they wanted some adjustments to the records of the schools like Utah State that forfeited games. So it went before the judge. It was denied. So the judge sided essentially with the Mountain West on this regarding their transgender policy, cited Title IX, right, which protects these players for sexual orientation and gender identity. So the case is going to go on. This is just kind of one little piece of it that was ruled on.
All right, Preston, final word is yours.
Yeah, well, what happened was the Mountain West Conference goes through. San Jose State makes it to the semis, and lo and behold, Boise State is the opponent there. They beat Utah State, and Boise State, they took a stand and said, no, we're not playing in this game. Even though it's the semis to get to the finals, we're not playing in it in protest. They forfeited the game. San Jose State goes to the championship game and loses to Colorado State. But the interesting thing that I read was, this is crazy to me, that the captain player that brought this lawsuit, and is involved in the lawsuit, she continued to play on the game with the player teammate alongside this teammate that's the alleged transgender athlete, playing side by side while this lawsuit's going. And they even had a team Thanksgiving dinner in Vegas right before the tournament game. So I didn't know she was still on the team. I didn't know that the captain who was bringing the suit was still on the team, but she is.
All right, gentlemen, before I set you loose, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yeah, Spence, we'd love to hear from anyone out there, your legal issues, especially if you have a personal injury case. That's what we do. Call us at 801-264-6677 or visit our website at handylawutah.com. You can learn all about us there and submit all of your questions.
All right, gentlemen, have a great weekend, and as always, go Utes.
Go Utes.